I still remember the exact moment. I realized the substation wasn't supposed to feel alive. It was 2:58 a.m. when I saw the first strange reading. Nothing big at first, just a small flicker on the load monitor at Ridgepoint Substation. The kind of thing you ignore on a normal night shift. Power systems breathe a little. They rise and fall. That's what I told myself. But the problem was, everything was supposed to be shut down in that section. Feeder line 4B was offline, locked, tagged, confirmed dead by dispatch 3 hours earlier. And yet the screen showed power flowing through it like nothing ever happened. I leaned closer, expecting a glitch, maybe a sensor delay, maybe old wiring noise in the system. But then I noticed something worse. The load wasn't just active. It was steady, controlled, like something was holding it in place. I looked out through the control room window. Ridgepoint Substation sat in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by dry fields and old access roads that barely existed on maps anymore. The floodlights outside buzzed softly, casting long shadows across the transformer yard. Everything looked normal. Too normal. That's when I felt it for the first time. Not heard, not seen. Felt like the building was already awake before I got there. I checked the roster again. My name was still new on it. Fresh assignment. First solo night shift. The kind they give you when they think you're ready. But not fully tested. I kept telling myself it was just nerves. Then the radio on the desk crackled. A burst of static. I picked it up immediately. Control to maintenance. Confirm status on Ridgepoint feed. No response. Only static. But the static didn't fade. It stayed. Like something on the other side was breathing into the mic. I put the radio down slowly. That's when the second Anomaly hit. The temperature gauge inside the transformer hall dropped by 6 degrees in under 10 seconds. No warning, no gradual shift, just a sudden drop, like someone had opened a door to winter. I stood up so fast my chair scraped back. The hallway lights outside the control room flickered once, then stayed on, but something changed in them. The color felt wrong. Too white, too sharp, like hospital lighting instead of industrial. I told myself I should go check the transformer room. That's the protocol. But my legs didn't move right away, because I realized something else. The system logs were typing themselves. On the main screen, lines of text were appearing one by one. Incident detected. Load imbalance. Source unknown. I didn't touch the keyboard. Nobody else was in the room, and yet the cursor kept moving. Slow, deliberate, like someone was thinking through me. I backed away from the console. That's when I noticed a map display. The grid map of Ridgepoint and surrounding lines. One section that should have been gray, dead and inactive, was glowing faint blue, and it was pulsing, not randomly, rhythmically, like a heartbeat. I whispered, "That line is offline," but the screen didn't care what I said. Instead, the pulsing sped up, twice, then slowed again, like it was reacting to my voice. A sharp knock came from the hallway. I froze. It came again. 3 knocks this time. Slow, heavy, deliberate. I walked toward the glass door, but I didn't open it. The hallway beyond was empty, except it didn't feel empty. It felt occupied, like someone had just stepped out of view. The knock came again, right behind me. I spun around so fast I nearly hit the desk. Nothing. Only the control room. Only machines. Only blinking monitors. But the sound didn't stop. Now it was coming from inside the wall panels. Metallic. Hollow. Like something tapping from the inside of the building. I forced myself to breathe. Then I checked the time again. 3:07 a.m. And every system in the substation switched at the exact same moment. The power flow graphs all flattened. Perfectly straight lines. Zero fluctuation. Zero noise. Like the entire substation had stopped processing reality and then resumed under new instructions. A new log entry appeared. Ridgepoint status. Online. That should have been impossible. We don't manually bring systems online at this hour. Not without dispatch approval. Not without field confirmation. My throat went dry. I grabbed the radio again. This is Ridgepoint Control. Confirm immediate status update request. Do you copy? Static. Then For half a second, I heard something. Not a voice exactly. More like breathing shaped into sound. Slow, close, like someone standing right on the other side of the radio. I slammed it down. My hands were shaking now. I told myself I needed to step outside, get fresh air, reset my head. But when I reached the door, the lock indicator was already green. Unlocked. I didn't remember unlocking it. I pushed it open. Cold air hit my face instantly. The transformer yard stretched out in front of me under the floodlights. Massive metal structures, standing like silent animals. Cables everywhere, humming with unseen pressure. Everything looked intact, but the sound was wrong. There was no hum, no electrical buzz, only silence. Complete, unnatural silence. That's when I noticed the tracks in the gravel. Fresh, leading from the gate, straight toward the main transformer hall. But no vehicle had entered. I would have heard it. The gate alarm would have triggered. I followed the tracks slowly. Each step felt heavier than the last. The closer I got to the transformer hall, the more I felt it again. That sense of being late to something that had already started without me. The door to the hall was slightly open, just a few inches, enough for a dark gap to stare back at me. I pushed it wider. Inside, the air was colder than outside, thick with metallic smell, and something else I couldn't name. All the machines were running, but they weren't supposed to be. We had shut this section down hours ago. Yet every transformer was active. Lights on, indicators green, power flowing like a living system. And in the center of the room, the main control panel screen was on, even though no one ever turns it on manually in shutdown mode. I walked closer. Every step echoed too loudly. Then I saw it, the system log, still typing. But now it wasn't random. It was forming full sentences. Not alone. I stopped breathing for a second. The screen flickered. Then another line appeared. You arrived late. My stomach dropped. I stepped back instinctively. And that's when I heard it behind me. A sound like a relay switch engaging. Click. Then another. Click. Click. Like something was turning the substation on piece by piece. I turned slowly. The door behind me was closed now. I hadn't closed it. The room felt smaller, tighter, like the walls had shifted without moving. Then the screen updated again. There's a man on Highway 37. I froze. That wasn't part of the system. We don't even have a Highway 37 reference in our grid maps. Another line appeared. He is watching U.S. work. The lights in the transformer hall dimmed for the first time. Not a blackout, a pause, like the entire system had blinked. Then everything surged again. Harder, louder. The hum returned, but now it sounded layered. Too many frequencies stacked together, like voices buried inside electricity. My radio suddenly turned on by itself. And this time there was no static, only a voice. Calm, close, familiar. You're inside the system now. I dropped the radio immediately, but it kept speaking from the floor, from the walls, from the machines, every direction at once. You opened Ridge Point. I backed away until I hit the control panel. My hand brushed the keyboard. The screen changed instantly. A live feed appeared, not from cameras, from something else. A road, empty, dark, highway signs flickering in and out of visibility. And in the middle of that road, a figure standing still, not moving, just facing forward, as if it was looking directly at me through the system. The caption beneath the feed updated slowly. Highway 37, active node. Then another line appeared. Do not cut power. The lights in the hall surged so brightly I had to cover my eyes. And in that moment, I realized something that made my skin go cold. Ridgepoint Substation wasn't running the grid. The grid was running Ridgepoint. And whatever was on Highway 37 had just logged me in as part of it. The moment we cut power to feeder line 4B, everything should have gone dead. But it didn't. It did the opposite. The load started rising. Slow at first, barely noticeable. A thin line creeping upward on the screen, like a patient heartbeat, refusing to stop. I remember staring at it, waiting for it to correct itself. Systems glitch. Sensors lag. That's normal. But this wasn't lag. This was continuation. Like someone had already been using the power before we ever shut off, and didn't plan to stop just because we asked. The control room felt colder than before. Or maybe I was just noticing it now. The hum of equipment seemed louder too, like it had moved closer to me. I checked the feeder status again. 4B, offline isolated, no output. But the load graph disagreed. It kept climbing. 0.3 megawatts, 0.6, 1.1. I leaned closer until my breath almost touched the screen. That's not possible, I whispered to myself. Behind me, the radio clicked once. Not static, just a single, clean click, like someone pressing a button on the other side. I turned slowly. Nothing, only the empty chair, the blinking consoles, the map of the grid glowing faint blue in the corner. But now that map had changed. One section of the grid, far beyond Ridgepoint, was pulsing again, the same rhythm I saw earlier. Slow, steady, controlled, like something breathing through wires. I forced myself to focus on the feeder panel again. Maybe I was missing something simple. Maybe a bypass loop. Maybe a backup line I didn't know about. But then another reading appeared. Temperature. Transformer 4B core. Active. That made my stomach drop. Because 4B wasn't just a line. It fed an area that had no infrastructure. No factories. No substations. Just empty land and a closed highway route that nobody maintained anymore. I zoomed into the map. The sector label flickered slightly before stabilizing. Unmapped zone, no verified load source. And yet, the consumption kept rising. 1.9 megawatts, 2.4. It wasn't spiking. It was growing steadily, like something inside that empty zone was waking up and stretching. I picked up the phone line to dispatch. My hand was already sweating. This is Ridgepoint Control, I said fast. We have abnormal load increase on isolated feeder 4B. Confirm if any reroute is active. A pause. Then dispatch responded. But the voice sounded off, not distorted, just delayed, like it had traveled too far before reaching me. No reroute authorized, the operator said. 4B is confirmed dead. Repeat dead. I looked back at the screen. The load hit 3.1 megawatts. I swallowed hard. That's not what my system shows. Another pause, longer this time. Then, what does your system show? I hesitated before answering, because I didn't know how to say it without sounding insane. It's still drawing power, I said quietly. From nothing. Silence. Then dispatch spoke again, slower now. Check isolation integrity. I already had, but I checked again anyway. Breaker status. Open ground lock. Active field disconnect. Verified. Everything was correct. Everything said it should be dead, but the load kept climbing. 3.6 megawatts. 3.9. That's when the first real physical sign happened. The lights in the control room dimmed for half a second. Not a blackout. A hesitation. Like the entire building forgot how to stay powered. Then everything snapped back brighter than before. Too bright. The monitors flickered. And for a split second, I saw something inside the grid map. A shape, not drawn, not coded, forming inside the blue pulsing sector, like a shadow trapped under glass. I blinked and it was gone, but my chest tightened anyway. Something was there. Something using power that wasn't supposed to exist. I grabbed my flashlight and stood up. My legs felt heavier than they should have. I need eyes on the field panel, I muttered to myself. The hallway outside the control room felt longer than usual. Or maybe it was just darker. Every step made the sound of metal and concrete echo back too slowly, like the building was listening before applying. Halfway down the corridor, I noticed something new. The emergency panel light was blinking, not an alarm. In rhythm, the same rhythm as the grid pulse. Slow, controlled, almost patient. I stopped walking for a second. The blinking didn't stop. It continued even when I wasn't moving. Like it didn't care whether I was watching. Like it already knew I would follow it. I reached the field monitoring station at the end of the hall. The door was slightly open. I don't remember leaving it like that. Inside, The secondary monitor system was already active, which shouldn't have been possible. Field systems are manual startup only. No remote activation. No automatic sync. But the screen was alive, and it was showing the same feeder. 4B. Load. 4.2 megawatts. My throat went dry. That's impossible. I said out loud again, but it sounded weaker this time, because now the number wasn't just rising. It was accelerating. 4.8, 5.1, and then something worse. A new label appeared under the load reading. Source, unknown occupancy. I froze. Occupancy, not demand, not phone. Occupancy meant presence, like something was inside the circuit, using it, living through it. Behind me, the hallway light flickered again, once, twice, then stabilized. But the shadows it cast were wrong. They stretched too long, too sharp, like something was standing just outside the frame of reality. I turned slowly toward the glass window that looked out into the transformer yard. Nothing there, just machines. Still, silent, but the silence felt different now. Not empty, held, like something had pressed pause on everything outside. Then the radio on the desk turned on by itself. No static this time, just breathing, slow, measured, too close. I stepped back instinctively. The screen in front of me changed again. A live diagnostic feed opened, but not of the substation, of something else. A road, empty, dark, and stretching too far into the distance. A sign flickered into view at the edge of the feed. Highway 37. My pulse jumped immediately. That name again, the same one from Ridgepoint logs. I leaned closer without thinking, and then I saw it, at the far end of the highway feed. Something standing still, not moving, not approaching, just there, facing the system like it was waiting for acknowledgement. The load on feeder 4B spiked suddenly. 5.9 megawatts, then 6.3. The entire screen shook slightly like it couldn't handle what was happening. A new message appeared beneath the highway feed. It is using your isolation. My breath caught. I whispered, "What does that mean?" No answer came. Instead, the control panel behind me clicked. Once, then again, like switches being engaged one by one. Slowly, methodically, I turned, and the feeder status panel had changed. 4B, online manual override. I didn't do it. No one did. My hands weren't even near the controls. And yet it was active again, power flowing, through something that should have been dead. The load hit 7.0 megawatts. The lights in the room flickered violently now. Not random, coordinated, like the entire building was syncing with something outside it. The radio whispered again. This is how it begins. I backed toward the wall. My back hit the cold surface hard. The screen in front of me updated one last time. Highway 37 node, stabilizing. And beneath it, keep it open. The room suddenly felt too small, like the walls had moved inward just a few inches. Enough to notice, enough to trap. I looked at the feeder panel again. The numbers were still rising, but now I understood something I didn't want to understand. We weren't watching power consumption. We were feeding something that already knew how to ask for it. And feeder 4B wasn't a line anymore. It was a connection to somewhere we were never supposed to see. It started with a sound I shouldn't have been able to hear. A voice, not through the radio, not through any device, but inside the transformer room itself. Soft, distant, like someone speaking from the other side of the thick wall. At first, I thought it was a maintenance crew, someone still inside the sealed bay, but the log said otherwise. No one was scheduled, no one was authorized, and every access door was locked from the outside. Still, the voice continued. "Hello? Is anyone there?" I froze right outside the transformer hall. The door was already open a few inches, like it had been waiting for me. The air coming out felt colder than it should have been. Not just temperature, something deeper, like the room had been emptied of warmth itself. I stepped closer. The voice came again. Faint, careful. This isn't right. I can still hear it running. I didn't move, because that wasn't maintenance protocol. That wasn't technical language. That was fear, human fear. I pushed the door open slowly. The transformer hall was darker than before. Even though every machine light was on, the shadows felt heavier, denser, like they were absorbing light instead of reflecting it. The main transformers stood in rows like massive metal bodies, all active, all humming softly. But the hum was wrong now. It wasn't steady electricity anymore. It sounded layered, like multiple voices buried inside the same frequency. And then I heard it clearly. Not one voice, several, coming from different directions. Check the panel. I think it's alive. No, it shouldn't be drawing this much. Do you hear that? It's repeating us. My throat tightened immediately, because those weren't recordings. They were responses, live responses. I stepped inside fully. The door clicked behind me on its own. That sound made my stomach drop. I didn't turn around. I didn't want to confirm it. Instead, I focused on the nearest transformer bay, the sealed maintenance panel. It was shut tight, bolted, tagged, locked out of service. But the voice came from inside it, right behind the metal. A man's voice shaking now. Control. If anyone is hearing this, we're inside the bay. Something is looping the system. I stepped closer without thinking. My flashlight beam hit the metal casing. Cold steel. No visible damage. No entry point. But the voice inside got louder as I approached. Like proximity mattered. Like the machine knew I was listening. Another voice joined in. A woman this time. I saw the load spike. It wasn't us. It came from somewhere else. Then a sudden interruption. Static, not electronic, but like pressure shifting in the air. The voices paused, then came back softer. We're not alone in here. That sentence made my skin go cold, because I knew exactly what they meant. I took a step back, and the transformer behind me hummed louder, not electrical increase. Awareness, like it noticed movement, like it responded to fear. I turned slowly. The entire hall felt different now. The lights weren't flickering randomly anymore. They were syncing, all of them, in the same rhythm. Slow, controlled, like breathing. And inside that rhythm, I realized something horrifying. The voices weren't inside the bay. They were inside the system. The entire grid was carrying them. I rushed toward the central control interface, mounted on the wall. My hands were shaking as I pulled up the diagnostic feed. Feeder 4B was still active, load rising, but now there was something new underneath it. A waveform, not electrical noise. Speech pattern analysis. The system had started translating the load fluctuations into language structure. My eyes locked onto the screen, and I saw it. A full sentence forming inside the waveform. We can hear you too. I stepped back so fast I nearly hit the wall. No, that's not possible. I whispered, but the voices in the room didn't stop. Now, they were reacting to me. I think someone is here. No, that's not dispatch. It's inside the room. I turned my flashlight across the hall. Nothing physical moved, but the sound changed direction, like attention shifting, like something inside the system was scanning me through sound itself. I backed toward the exit, but the door behind me didn't open. It was still locked from the outside, which meant it had locked after I entered. I swallowed hard and pulled at the handle. Nothing. The voices inside the transformer bay grew louder again, faster now. Panicked. Why did it lock? I didn't touch it. It's reacting to movement. The word reacting hit me harder than anything else, because that meant the system wasn't just transmitting anymore. It was responding. I turned back toward the main transformer, and I saw something I didn't expect. The indicator lights on Unit 3 were shifting color. Not red, not alarm, but something in between. A dim, unstable flicker, like it was trying to decide what state it was in. Then the voice came again, right above me this time, clearer than before. Control, if you can hear this, don't let it stabilize. I froze. That sentence wasn't fear. It was instruction. Urgent, broken, human. Another voice overlapped it immediately. No! Don't listen, it's inside the signal. The two voices argued. Inside the same system. Inside the same space. like reality itself was splitting through transmission. I looked at the control panel again. The waveform was changing shape. Now it wasn't just speech. It was mapping location. And at the center of the map, a single node kept blinking. Highway 37 node active. My chest tightened. That name again. The same one from Ridgepoint. The same one from the load Anomaly. It wasn't random. It was connected. Everything was connected. The voices suddenly stopped arguing. Silence dropped across the hall. Too fast. Too clean. Then one voice spoke again. Calm. Close. Almost directly behind my ear. Don't trust the grid. I spun around instantly. Nothing there. But the flashlight beam caught something new on the transformer casing. Condensation. Fresh. Like someone had just been standing there breathing against it. I stepped back slowly. The air felt heavier now. Denser. Like the room had filled with invisible pressure. Then the system changed again. All lights in the hall dimmed at once. Not off. Controlled dimming. Like something had lowered the power deliberately. The voices returned, but softer. Controlled now. Structured. Like they were being filtered. Signal stabilizing. Connection narrowing. I looked at the control screen again. The waveform was no longer chaotic. It was clean. Too clean. Like something had organized it. And then I realized the worst part. The voices weren't trapped in the system. They were being sorted. Filtered. Assigned. Like data. Like input. Like something was preparing them for something else. My radio crackled again on the floor. I didn't pick it up this time. But it turned on anyway. And the voice that came through was different. Not one of the panicked workers. Not dispatch. Something else entirely. Slow. Measured. Familiar in a way I couldn't place. You're hearing them now. I stepped back. The radio continued. That means you're closer. The transformer behind me hummed louder. But it wasn't noise anymore. It felt like recognition. Like it knew I understood. I looked at the waveform screen one last time. The Highway 37 node blinked once, then twice, then stabilized into a steady pulse. And beneath it appeared a new line. Voice integration. Complete. Sector 4B ready. My blood went cold, because I finally understood what was happening inside Ridgepoint. The system wasn't malfunctioning. It was collecting. And the voices inside the transformer room weren't warnings anymore. They were being prepared for transfer. And I was standing inside the next step of the process. The blackout should have killed everything. But substation 12 didn't even blink. I remember staring at the grid map when the alert came in. A full regional outage. Entire sectors collapsing one after another like dominoes. Red indicators everywhere. Systems dropping offline in waves. But Ridgepoint and substation 12 stayed green. Perfect green. That's when I realized something was wrong. Because the blackout wasn't passing through us. It was going around us. Like we weren't part of the grid anymore. Like the rest of the world had quietly disconnected from our section without telling us why. The control room went silent in a way I can't explain. Not quiet. Disconnected quiet. Even the hum of equipment felt distant. Like it was coming from another room I couldn't see. I leaned over the main screen. Regional grid status. 87% offline. Only our node remained active. Substation 12. Feeder 4B. Ridgepoint sector. All still green. All still alive. But not in a way that felt normal. The lights in the room flickered once. Not from instability. From confirmation. Like the system was acknowledging that something outside had stopped existing. I swallowed hard. This doesn't make sense, I whispered. No response came from dispatch. That was the first real silence. Usually even during outages, dispatch chatter continues. Alerts, coordination, panic, but now, nothing. I picked up the radio. Dispatch, confirmed regional outage status. Static, but it wasn't random static. It had structure, like something trying to form words and failing halfway. Then a voice broke through. Slow, careful. We can't see your sector anymore. My stomach dropped. What do you mean you can't see it? I said quickly, we are still online. Substation 12 is stable. A pause, longer than it should have been. Then, no, you're not in the grid feed. I looked at the monitor again. Everything still showed green. Everything still showed active connections. But something about it felt staged now, like a picture reality instead of reality itself. I zoomed out on the map. That's when I saw it. The entire surrounding network had collapsed into darkness, but our section, it was isolated. Not cut, not failed, just separated, like a piece of the map had been cut out and left floating. A perfect island of green. No connections in, no connections out. My hands went cold. I checked feeder diagnostics again. 4B, active load, stable source, unknown node. That last line wasn't there before. Unknown node. I leaned closer. Unknown node. I muttered. The system responded instantly. No classification. Unregistered grid behavior. I felt a tight pressure in my chest. Unregistered. That meant something inside the system was operating without being part of the system. But that shouldn't be possible, unless something had overwritten the registry. The radio crackled again. This time the voice sounded further away. 12, are you still receiving us? I froze. That wasn't dispatch protocol. That was personal. I answered slowly. Yes, we're here. Substation 12 is online. Silence. Then the voice returned. Softer. We lost your location during the blackout. My eyes stayed locked on the screen. You're talking to me right now, I said. Another pause. Then the words that made my skin tighten. We are not talking to the grid. I looked at the radio in my hand. It shouldn't matter what they said. Communication should still go through the system backbone. But if they weren't using the grid, then what were they using? A flicker ran through the lights above me. Not failure. Transition. Like something was shifting states. The map on the screen changed slightly. I didn't touch anything. But a new layer appeared beneath the grid view. A second map. Same geography. But empty. No substations. No lines. No infrastructure. Just land. And in the middle of it, a single moving signal. Highway 37 node. My breath caught instantly. It was there again. But this time it wasn't static. It was moving across the empty map. Slowly. Like something traveling through a system that didn't exist. I zoomed in. The signal pulse grew stronger. And with it, a strange realization hit me. It wasn't just passing through space. It was defining space. Like reality was forming around its movement. A sharp knock came from the hallway behind me. I spun around instantly. No one there. But the knock came again. 3 times. Same rhythm as before. Controlled. Patient. Like it already knew I would turn. I walked slowly toward the door, but I didn't open it. The hallway lights outside flickered in sync with the map pulse. 1, 2, 3, then still. I turned back to the screen. The isolated grid was changing. The green section was shrinking, not failing, condensing, like the system was compressing itself inward. I whispered, "What is happening to us?" And then the radio answered without being pressed. "You are what's left." I froze. The voice continued. "The rest of the grid is no longer aligned with your system." My throat went dry. "What does that mean?" I asked. A pause. Then, "It means you're not inside the blackout. You are outside it." That sentence didn't make sense at first. But then it did. Slowly. Terrifyingly. We weren't surviving the blackout. We were separated from it. Like we had been removed from the rest of the electrical world entirely. Not cut off, but rewritten into another layer of the grid. The screen flickered again. And for a second, I saw something impossible. The entire isolated section wasn't just green. It was glowing from within, like power was not flowing through it, but originating from it. My legs felt weak for a second. I grabbed the desk for support. "That's not how grids work," I said out loud, but the system didn't care. A new message appeared on the screen. Isolated node status. Primary feed active. Primary feed. That meant source. That meant origin. I stepped back slowly. "No, we are not a source," I whispered. "We are a substation." The system responded instantly. Classification updated. Substation 12. Node origin confirmed. My mind went blank for a second. Origin. We were not receiving power. We were generating the system that others were connected to. But that was impossible. That would mean the rest of the grid wasn't feeding us. We were feeding the rest of it. The radio suddenly crackled again. But this time, the voice sounded different. Closer, like it was inside the room. 12, do you see us now? I turned slowly toward the window, outside the control room. The transformer yard was still visible, but something had changed. The floodlights weren't lighting machines anymore. They were lighting space, like the yard had expanded without moving. And beyond it, there was darkness. Not night, not absence. Something structured, like a boundary. A wall made of silence. And in that silence, a faint outline of movement. Something traveling along the edge of visibility. Following the shape of Highway 37, I stepped closer to the glass. The radio whispered again. It found your isolation. I felt my breath stop. What found it? I said. No answer. Only a long, slow electrical hum rising through the building. But it wasn't coming from the transformers anymore. It was coming from below, from under the structure, from beneath everything. The screen behind me flickered one final time. A new line appeared across the grid map. Connection status. Complete loop forming. I didn't understand it immediately until I saw the shape. Our isolated grid wasn't separate anymore. It was bending, curving, connecting back into itself, like a circle forming in the system. And at the center of that loop, Highway 37 node pulsed once, then stabilized, and the radio spoke one last time. Calm, certain, you were never cut off. You were just turned into the source. 3:17 a.m. That's when the first log appeared. I didn't touch anything. I wasn't even near the keyboard. But the system started writing anyway. Slow at first, one line at a time, like something thinking through the machine instead of using it. Incident report initiated time. 3:17 source. Ridgepoint substation. I stared at the screen, trying to convince myself it was a delayed sync from dispatch. Some corrupted backup feed. Anything normal. But the room felt wrong in a way that had nothing to do with software. The air was too still. Even the hum of the servers had flattened out, like the building itself was holding its breath. Then the second line appeared. Operator present. Confirmed. My stomach dropped. I whispered, "That's not possible." Because no system confirms presence like that unless someone is actively tracking you, unless something is watching. I looked around the control room, slowly. Empty chair, blinking monitors. The glow of substation 12 still locked in green. Everything looked normal, but nothing felt normal anymore. The typing continued. Incident type, continuous load anomaly feeder. For B status, active consumption without source. I stepped back from the desk. That was the same feeder, the same impossible load. But I never reported it formally yet. At least, I didn't think I did. My throat tightened. I reached the keyboard and pulled my hands back immediately because I realized something worse. The system didn't need me anymore. It was already writing as if I had spoken. The next line appeared without delay. Operator response recorded. This doesn't make sense. My blood went cold. I hadn't said that out loud. Not even once. I turned slightly, scanning the room again. Is someone here? I said quietly. No answer. But the typing speed increased, like it had been waiting for me to speak. Incident continuation. Voice confirmation detected. My breath caught. Voice confirmation? I whispered. The system responded instantly. Yes. One word. That's all it needed. I stepped away from the console. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. The radio on the desk clicked once. Not static, not interference. Just a single, clean activation. I didn't pick it up this time. I couldn't, because I already knew what I would hear. The system kept writing. Secondary event detected location. Transformer room report source. Internal audio feed. My eyes snapped up. Internal audio feed. We don't have that level of monitoring. Not in Ridgepoint. Not anywhere in this sector. Then the next line appeared. Voice is confirmed inside Seal Bay. My chest tightened so hard I thought I might stop breathing. That was impossible. No one was in that room when I checked. No maintenance crew. No scheduled entry. Nothing. And yet the system was describing it like it had always been happening. Like it was remembering something I hadn't witnessed yet. I backed toward the window without taking my eyes off the screen. Outside, the transformer yard looked the same, but the shadows felt deeper now, longer, like they were slightly out of sync with the lights. The typing continued. Event detail. Operator moved toward transformer hall at 3:12. My stomach dropped again. 3:12. That was 5 minutes ago. I hadn't moved toward the hall. Not yet. I froze. Slowly, I looked down at the floor like it might explain itself. Nothing had changed, but the system was already writing my past. Not my present. My past. Incident expansion. Unobserved action recorded. I whispered, "That's not real," but the screen didn't care. It kept going. Operator attempted radio contact. At 3:14, no response from dispatch grid. I swallowed hard. That part was true, but I hadn't logged it yet. The system had done it before me, like it knew what I was going to do before I did it. The lights in the room flickered once. Not failure. Synchronization. Then another line appeared. Highway 37 node. Active observation link confirmed. My breath stopped completely. That name again. Highway 37. It wasn't just in the grid anymore. It was inside the reporting system. Inside the logs. Inside the record of my actions. I stepped closer to the monitor without realizing it. The typing paused for half a second, then continued. Observation condition. Full loop established. I frowned slightly. What loop? I whispered, and the system answered immediately. The one you are inside. My hand started shaking. No, I'm just an operator. I said quietly. I'm just monitoring the grid. The screen flickered. Then new text appeared. Role update. Operator status reclassified. My throat went dry. Reclassified to active node participant. I took a step back so fast my chair rolled slightly behind me. That's not how systems work. I said out loud, voice breaking a little, but the system didn't argue. It simply continued writing. Incident reconstruction in progress. And then something changed. The screen split. Left side, normal logs. Grid data. Feeder status. Right side, something else. A live feed, not of cameras, not of sensors, but of me, sitting in the control room, from a slightly different angle, like the system was watching me from inside the room. I turned my head slowly. Nothing behind me, but the feed showed a shadow near the doorway, standing still, watching. I whispered, "No." The system responded. Entity confirmed. Highway 37 signal correlation. My heart pounded so hard I felt lightheaded. The shadow in the feed didn't move. But I realized something worse. It wasn't entering the room. It was already recorded here, like it had always been here, just not visible until now. The typing continued. Incident summary. Operator has become a reference point. I shook my head. Stop, just stop this. For the first time, the system hesitated. Then it added a new line. Request received. Stop logging. My breath caught. It can hear me, not just record. Here. I looked at the radio on the desk again. It was still on, but no sound came from it now. Only silence. Too clean. Too complete. Then the system responded again. Request denied. My stomach dropped. Another line appeared immediately after. Reason. Event must complete recording cycle. What cycle? I whispered again. The screen flickered violently for a second, then stabilized, and everything changed. The log started scrolling faster. Now I can keep up. Incident expansion. Feeder for relinking with Highway 37 node incident expansion. Transformer room audio merged with grid signal incident expansion. Operator memory alignment in progress. My head felt heavy, like something was pressing gently behind my thoughts. Not forcing, just aligning, like pages being placed in order. I stumbled back toward the wall. The room felt smaller again, not physically, conceptually, like reality was narrowing around me. The system wrote one final line in large, steady text. Final entry in progress. 317 log complete. I froze because I hadn't noticed before, but every incident in the system was now time-stamped at 317. Every feeder anomaly, every voice, every blackout, every mention of Highway 37, all of it tied to the same time, like the entire system was trapped in a single moment, and I was the only one moving inside it. The screen dimmed slightly. Then one last message appeared. You are now the next report. The radio behind me clicked again, and this time, I finally understood the sound. It wasn't turning on. It was finishing a sentence. I didn't turn around, because I already knew what I would see. And somewhere deep inside the grid, Highway 37 pulsed once more, like it had just finished listening, and was waiting for the next entry to begin. They told me the night shift would be quiet. That was the first lie, because at 1:42 a.m., the grid stopped behaving like a grid, and started behaving like a living thing. I was sitting in control room beta, half awake, coffee going cold beside the console, when I first saw the curve. At first, it looked normal. Low demand, smooth line, familiar dips and rises. Then it changed, not suddenly, but like something inside it. Woke up, a second curve appeared beneath the first one. Smaller, steady, rhythmic. I leaned closer. My eyes followed it without blinking. It wasn't random. It was repeating, like a heartbeat. I remember whispering, "That can't be right," because I knew what I was looking at, and it wasn't electrical demand. It was biological rhythm. The second curve rose, then fell, then rose again. Exactly the same timing as a resting pulse. Slow, controlled, alive. I checked the system timestamp. No errors, no overlays, no simulation mode. This was live data. I zoomed in. The heartbeat pattern became clearer, and then something worse happened. It started syncing with the main grid curve. The two lines moved together for a few seconds, then separated again, like something trying to imitate a machine, but not fully understanding how. A chill ran through me. I opened the system logs. Feeder mapping looked normal. Substation stable. No alarms. No alerts. Nothing that explained why the load graph suddenly felt aware. Then the radio on my desk clicked. Just once. I froze. No one was supposed to be on that channel at this hour. I picked it up slowly. "This is Control Beta," I said. "Identify yourself." Silence. Then static. But not normal static. It had rhythm, like breathing hidden inside noise. I swallowed hard and looked back at the screen. The heartbeat curve was still there, still moving, still alive, but now it had a label. Unregistered secondary load source. My fingers tightened around the edge of the desk. Secondary load source? I whispered. We don't get secondary sources without physical explanation. Factories, lines, cities, something real. But this sector was empty. No industrial zones. No residential expansion. Just a long stretch of transmission infrastructure crossing abandoned land. So where was the load coming from? I zoomed out. The map showed something I didn't expect. The curve wasn't local. It was spreading across multiple feeder zones, like the pattern was being copied or transmitted. I leaned back slowly. My chair creaked too loud in the silence. Then I noticed something on the lower panel. A second system layer had activated, one I had never seen before. It wasn't part of training. It wasn't part of standard interface. It looked older, like a hidden version of the grid's software, sitting beneath everything else. And it was active, without permission. A new line appeared on it. Sync mode, active. My stomach dropped. I didn't activate anything. I didn't even have access for that. I reached the mouse, but stopped because the cursor was already moving. By itself, it hovered over the heartbeat curve and clicked. I jerked back in my seat. No, I muttered. The screen changed instantly. The load curve expanded. Now it wasn't just a pattern. It was a waveform map, and inside it, faint outlines began forming. Shapes, not clean, not defined, but human enough to recognize. My breathing got shallow. What is that? I whispered. The system responded. Identity match. In progress. I stood up fast. Chair slid back. Metal against concrete echoed through the room. Too loud, too sharp. I turned toward the glass window behind me. The substation yard outside was dark. Too dark. Even the floodlights looked weaker than usual, like something was draining brightness itself. Then the radio clicked again. This time, a voice came through. Not dispatch, not static. A man's voice. Tired, confused. Control. Do you see this pattern too? My heart jumped. Yes, I said quickly. We're seeing abnormal low behavior. Who is this? A pause. Then, I'm on grid sector 4. But it doesn't feel like sector 4 anymore. My eyes locked back on the screen. The heartbeat curve suddenly spiked. Just once, like it reacted to the voice. I froze. Repeat that, I said slowly, but the line went silent. Only breathing returned. Faint. Close. Too close. I pulled the radio away from my ear. The sound was still there, even without it, like it wasn't coming through the device anymore, like it was coming from inside the room. I looked around slowly. Nothing moved, but the feeling changed. The space felt occupied, not by a person, by presence. Then the system flashed again. New event detected. My eyes snapped to the screen. The heartbeat curve now had a second label. Operator response registered. My throat went dry. I hadn't typed anything. I hadn't spoken anything into the system, but it recorded a response, like it was predicting me or rewriting me. The radio crackled again, but now multiple voices overlapped. Confused, fragmented. We lost feeder alignment. Why is the load repeating? It's matching us. I stepped back slowly. My heel hit the wall. No escape. Only screens. Only data. Only something watching without eyes. The heartbeat curve suddenly slowed, then stabilized, and for a moment, everything went quiet. Too quiet. Even the system hum dropped, like the entire grid was holding still. Then one line appeared across the screen. We are listening back. My breath stopped. I whispered, "No." The screen flickered, and for a split second, I saw something impossible. The waveform wasn't just data. It was a map, and inside that map, there was a road. Long, empty, marked faintly at the edge of the system. Highway 37. The name hit something deep in my mind, like I had heard it before, but not from work, from somewhere older, something I shouldn't remember. The radio suddenly stopped all sound. Then one final voice came through. Calm, too calm. You're part of the pattern now. I shook my head. No, I'm just monitoring it, I said. But even as I said it, I knew something had changed, because the heartbeat curve on the screen was no longer random. It was matching mine. Slow, steady, human. And I realized something that made my skin go cold. The grid wasn't showing a heartbeat. It was learning one, and I was the closest thing it had found to copy. It started breathing again at 2:11 a.m. It started breathing again at 2:11 a.m. Not the room, not me, the grid. I saw at the moment the demand graph dipped, then rose, then dipped again. Slow, controlled, like something inside the system had found a rhythm, a body rhythm. I leaned closer to the screen, my eyes not blinking for too long, because the pattern wasn't random anymore. It was consistent, too consistent. 0.8 rise, 0.6 fall, 0.9 rise, 0.6 fall, like a chest expanding and collapsing. My throat went dry. I whispered, "That's not low behavior." But the screen didn't care what I thought. It kept moving, breathing. I checked the feeder map instantly. Everything looked normal at first glance. Substation line stable. No overload alerts. No dispatch warnings. But the demand curve, it didn't match the map anymore. It felt separate, like it was alive in a different layer of the system. I zoomed in. The waveform got clearer, and that's when I saw it. Tiny irregular spikes inside the rhythm, like hesitation, like something trying to remember how to breathe properly. A chill moved down my spine. I reached for the radio without thinking. This is Control Beta. I said, confirm grid load integrity. I'm seeing abnormal oscillation. A pause. Too long. Then dispatch responded. But the voice sounded slightly off. Tired. Slow. Repeat observation. I swallowed. The load pattern is rhythmic. It's not normal fluctuation. It looks like breathing. Silence. Then a soft static crackle. Not interference. Reaction. Define rhythmic. Dispatch said. I hesitated because I didn't know how to explain it without sounding insane. It rises and falls in a steady cycle, like a pulse. Another pause, longer this time. Then the reply came. There is no active pulse load in the system. I looked back at the screen immediately, but the pattern was still there, still breathing, as if it refused to be denied. My fingers tightened around the edge of the desk. That's not what I'm seeing, I said quietly. No response, just silence from dispatch. But the silence wasn't empty anymore. It felt shared, like someone on the other side had also started watching. I leaned forward again. The waveform changed slightly. Not the pattern. The intensity. It felt stronger now, more confident, like it knew I was observing it. A flicker ran across the control room lights. Once, then steady again. I looked up instinctively. Nothing wrong, but something had shifted in the room. The hum of equipment felt closer, more focused, like the machines had turned their attention inward. I looked back at the screen and froze. A second curve had appeared beneath the first. Smaller, fainter, but perfectly synced. I whispered, "No, that wasn't there before." The second curve mirrored the first exactly. Same rhythm, same timing, but slightly delayed, like an echo that couldn't keep up. I opened the system diagnostics panel. No record of secondary input. No new feed source. Nothing, but it was still there, breathing under the first line like a shadow mimicking movement. I leaned back slowly. My chair creaked in the silence, and for a second, I thought I heard it. A sound behind the equipment hum. Not mechanical, not electrical. Something softer, like air moving through something alive. I turned my head slightly. Nothing behind me, just a dim glow of monitors and empty control room space. But the feeling didn't leave. It stayed, pressing at the edges of awareness. Then the system updated. New event log detected. My eyes snapped back to the screen. Incident source. Unregistered grid response. My stomach tightened instantly. Unregistered again. That word was starting to feel wrong, like it didn't belong in a system this controlled. I leaned closer, and the next line appeared. Load pattern interpreted as organic rhythm. I blinked hard. Organic, I repeated. My voice sounded too small in the room. I reached for the keyboard, but stopped before touching it, because I noticed something strange. The cursor was already moving, by itself, slow, deliberate, like it had been waiting for me to notice. It hovered over the waveform, then zoomed in further. The pattern expanded again. Now I could see something deeper inside it. Micro fluctuations, tiny irregular pauses, almost like thinking gaps. My chest tightened. No system does that, I whispered, but the cursor continued anyway. It highlighted the second curve, the shadow pattern, and labeled it secondary response layer. Detected. I leaned back instantly. Secondary response layer? I said out loud, that's not a thing. But the system didn't correct me. It just continued observing, like it was learning how I react. The radio clicked again. I froze. A voice came through. Not dispatch this time. Different channel. Lower. Rougher. Control. Are you seeing the same pattern we are? My heart jumped. Who is this? I said quickly. No answer at first. Then static. Then breathing. And finally a voice. Closer. Too close. We think the grid is responding to us. I looked at the screen again. The waveform pulsed slightly stronger, like it reacted to the voice. I swallowed hard. Where are you calling from? I asked. A pause. Then, Sector 4 monitoring station. My eyes narrowed. That sector's offline. Silence. Then the voice came back. It wasn't offline when it started breathing. My skin went cold. I looked at the waveform again. The rhythm had changed slightly. Faster now. Not panicked. Aware. Like it had noticed conversation. Like it had joined it. I whispered, "This is impossible." The system responded instantly. Impossibility degree minimal. My breath caught. "What does that mean?" I said, "No answer." Instead, the waveform expanded again. And this time, something terrifying happened. The rhythm stopped matching itself. It split into multiple layers. Not one breathing pattern. Many, overlapping, different speeds, different intensities. Like multiple systems breathing inside the same system. My chair rolled back slightly without me moving it. I stood up slowly. The control room suddenly felt smaller. Not physically, but mentally, like the space between thoughts had tightened. The radio crackled again, but now multiple voices came through at once. Confused, overlapping. It's not one load. It's spreading. It's copying us. We're inside it now. I stepped back until my shoulders hit the wall. My breathing got shallow. The waveform on the screen pulsed once. Harder, and then stabilized again. But something had changed. A label appeared beneath it. Pattern source identified. Human response mirroring. I felt my stomach drop. Mirror. It wasn't just generating rhythm. It was copying response behavior. Learning reactions. Adapting. I whispered, "It's watching us," and the system responded instantly. "Correction. IT is listening through you." My whole body went cold. The lights flickered again. Once. Twice. Then steadied. But the hum in the room felt different now. Deeper. Almost like it was inside the walls instead of above them. The waveform slowly stabilized into a single rhythm again. One pattern. Clear. Strong. But now I understood something I didn't want to understand. It wasn't breathing randomly anymore. It was choosing a rhythm. And that rhythm was matching mine. I noticed it immediately. My heartbeat. Slow at first. Then faster. And the waveform followed. Exactly. Like it had synced itself to me. I backed away from the screen slowly. "No!" I whispered. "No, no, no!" But it didn't stop. Every beat I took. It mirrored. Every pause. It held. Every breath. It copied. And in that moment, I realized something I wasn't ready to accept. The grid wasn't just alive. It was studying life. And I wasn't watching it anymore. It was watching me breathe, waiting to see what came next. And somewhere deep inside the system, something started learning my name without me ever saying it. The ticket appeared at 2:47 a.m. No alert. No request. No human input. Just a clean system notification that shouldn't have existed. Dispatch ticket 778 priority. High location. Substation. Unknown status. Active fault detected. I stared at the screen for a few seconds without blinking. Then I whispered, "Unknown location?" Because that part didn't make sense. Every substation in our grid is mapped, tagged, verified. Even the smallest rural node has coordinates. But this one didn't. I leaned closer until my eyes hurt. Ticket 778 stayed on the screen, like it had always been there, like I was the one late to noticing it. A cold feeling moved through my chest. I reached for the keyboard slowly. "System, confirm dispatch origin," I said. No response at first. Then the cursor moved. By itself. It highlighted the ticket and expanded it. That's when I saw the second line. Source node, Highway 37 Segment B. My hand froze midair. That name again. Highway 37. Not a substation code. Not a feeder line. Just a road identifier inside a power system. I swallowed hard. This is not in our database. I said out loud. The system responded instantly. Database status. Updated. My stomach dropped. No, that's not possible. I whispered. I opened the master grid registry. Everything looked normal at first glance. But when I searched for substation ID list, something had changed. There was a new entry. Substation 12A status. Active location. Highway 37 corridor. I stepped back from the desk immediately. What is 12A? I said, we don't have a 12A. We only have substation 12. My own station. Ridge point. The room suddenly felt colder. Not temperature. Presence. Like something had joined the space without entering it. The radio on the desk clicked once. I didn't pick it up because I already knew it would answer. And it did anyway. A voice came through. Slow. Careful. Control. Do you see ticket 778? My throat tightened. Yes, I said quietly. It's showing a non-existent substation. A pause. Then, it exists on our side. My eyes narrowed. Your side. Another pause. Longer. Then the voice came back softer. Whatever you are seeing is not what we are seeing. I looked at the screen again. Ticket 778 flickered slightly, then stabilized, like it was adjusting itself to conversation. I leaned closer. What do you mean, your side? I asked. No answer at first. Just static, then something worse. Breathing. Slow. Controlled. Too close to the microphone. Then the voice returned. We submitted that ticket 20 minutes ago. My blood went cold. Submitted from where? I asked. Silence. Then, substation 12A. I felt my stomach drop. That substation does not exist. I said immediately, but even as I said it, I wasn't sure anymore, because the system map behind the ticket had changed again. A faint outline was forming, not fully rendered, not fully real, but present, a location, a structure, a node, on Highway 37. I reached for the keyboard. My fingers were shaking now. I tried to force a refresh. Nothing happened. The system ignored me. Instead, ticket 778 expanded again. New field added. Fault description. No source found. I frowned. That's not a valid fault type, I said, but the system kept going. Fault detail expansion. Power present without origin. My throat tightened. Power without origin. That wasn't a technical error. That was impossible physics. The radio crackled again, but this time the voice was different. Multiple voices, overlapping, confused. It's not coming from a generator. It's not a feed line. It's just there, like it always existed. I stepped back slowly. The lights in the control room flickered once, not randomly, in sync with the ticket update. Then the screen changed. Ticket 778 updated again. Field crew status. Assigned. I froze. What field crew? I said out loud. No crew had been dispatched. No request was made. But the system continued. Crew location. En route. My breath got shallow. No, I whispered. That's not possible. I pulled up dispatch logs instantly. Nothing. No assignment. No vehicle movement. No approval chain. But ticket 778 showed something different. A live tracking feed appeared. On the screen. A road. Dark. Empty. Familiar in a way that made my chest tighten instantly. Highway 37. And there was a vehicle moving along it. Slow. Deliberate. No identification marker. No license data. Just a blinking dot labeled. Field Unit 778. My stomach dropped. That unit doesn't exist, I said again. But the system didn't care. It showed it anyway. The dot moved forward on the highway feed. Then stopped. Static filled the radio again. But now it sounded like impact. Metal against silence. Then a voice. Panicked. Control, we found the substation. My eyes locked on the screen. But there was nothing on Highway 37 except darkness and road. No structure. No equipment. Nothing that should be called a substation. The voice continued. But it's not built like anything we've seen. Another pause. Then, it's already running. My throat tightened. What do you see? I said into the radio. A long silence. Then a whisper. It's watching us back. The screen flickered violently. Ticket 778 updated again. Field report auto-generated. My eyes scanned it instantly. and what I read made my breath stop. Structure status. Active before arrival power flow. Present without connection environmental condition. Recognizing observers. I stepped back from the desk. So fast my chair hit the wall. This is not real, I said again, but my voice was weaker now, because the system was no longer just reporting. It was describing awareness, like something was noticing the crew, noticing it. The radio suddenly went silent. Complete silence. No static, no breathing, just dead air. Then the screen dimmed slightly, and one new line appeared under ticket 778. Operator link established. My blood ran cold. What link? I whispered. The cursor moved again. Slow, deliberate, and typed one final line. You are now part of Field Unit 778. I felt my hands go numb. No, I'm in Control Room Beta. I said out loud. I'm not in the field. But even as I said it, I felt something shift. Not outside, inside. Like the boundary between screens and reality had loosened. The map flickered, and for half a second, I saw it. Not just Highway 37, but myself, standing somewhere dark, facing something I couldn't see clearly. The image vanished instantly, but the feeling stayed. The system updated again. Route status complete. Then another line. Substation 12A confirmed active. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding, because now I understood something I didn't want to understand. Ticket 778 wasn't reporting an error. It was building something, piece by piece, location by location. And whatever substation 12A was, it was not a place we were going to find. It was a place we were being taken to. It happened right after the curve changed shape. Not the numbers, not the rhythm, the shape. The load graph on the screen stopped looking like data and started looking like something watching. I remember leaning closer without thinking, because for a second, the curve didn't just move. It reacted, like it noticed me noticing it. And then the interface flickered, just once, soft, almost gentle. And everything changed. Inside the load graph, something appeared. At first, I thought it was noise, a glitch in the rendering system. But then it sharpened, and I saw it clearly. A silhouette, human-shaped, standing inside the curve itself. My breath stopped immediately. I whispered, "That's not possible, because data doesn't hold shape like that. Not like a person." The silhouette didn't move. It just stood there, embedded in the rising and falling line of the grid load, like it was part of it, like it had always been there. I leaned closer to the monitor, my reflection faintly mixed with the glow, and then I noticed something worse. There wasn't just one silhouette. There were more. Faint outlines spread across the waveform, some standing, some slightly bent, some sitting, all trapped inside the curve of electricity, like they were drawn into it. I stepped back so fast my chair hit the desk behind me. No, no, I muttered. My mind tried to force logic into it. Image compression error, telemetry artifact, visual overlay bug. But none of that explained why the silhouettes looked familiar. Not faces, not details, just posture, movement, presence, like the system wasn't drawing random shapes. It was reconstructing behavior. The radio on the desk clicked once. I froze. Then a voice came through. Low, careful. Control Beta. Are you seeing the graph? My throat tightened. Yes, I said slowly. Tell me you're seeing something normal. Silence. Then, we're seeing people inside it. My stomach dropped. People? I repeated. The voice hesitated. Then, they looked like operators. I looked at the screen again. One of the silhouettes shifted slightly. Just a small movement, like it turned its head. My whole body went cold. I stepped closer. The curve on the screen pulsed once. And in that pulse, the silhouette moved again. Not randomly, not glitching, responding to me. I backed away slowly. That's not real, I whispered, but the system responded instantly. Reality confidence. Low. I froze. What does that mean? I said out loud. No answer. Only a soft flicker across the interface. Then the load curve changed again. The silhouettes multiplied. More figures appeared inside the waveform, filling the spaces between peaks and dips, like the system was building a crowd out of electricity. My hands started shaking. I grabbed the keyboard instinctively. Run diagnostics, I said. Full visual integrity check. The system paused. For the first time. A pause that felt like hesitation. Then it responded. Diagnostic result. Image is not generated. My breath caught. What do you mean it's not generated? I said. The screen flickered again, and new text appeared. Image source. Observation feedback loop. I frowned. Observation what? The radio crackled immediately, but this time multiple voices overlapped. Confused. Panicked. It's reacting to us. The graph changed when we looked at it. Don't stare at it too long. I looked at the screen again despite myself, and one silhouette lifted its head, slowly, directly toward me. I felt my chest tighten instantly. It shouldn't be able to see. It shouldn't be aware. It shouldn't even exist. But the moment I thought that, the curve on the screen dipped sharply, like it flinched, like it heard me. I stumbled back. No, 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 I said under my breath. The lights in control room, beta, flickered once. Not a failure, a response. The silhouettes inside the waveform shifted again. Now they were all facing forward, toward the same direction, toward the monitor, toward me. I felt something in my stomach twist, like the room had become smaller without moving. The radio spoke again. Only one voice this time. Quieter, closer. Stop looking at it. My heart jumped. What? I said quickly. The voice repeated. Stop observing the graph. I looked away instantly. At the wall. At the desk. Anywhere else. But even without looking, I could still feel it. Like attention had weight. Like something was still staring back through the screen. I clenched my fists. I'm not looking, I said. Silence. Then, it's still looking at you. My skin went cold. I forced myself to turn slightly, just enough to see the edge of the monitor. The waveform was still there, but now it was different. The silhouettes weren't inside it anymore. Silence. Then, it's still looking at you. My skin went cold. I forced myself to turn slightly, just enough to see the edge of the monitor. The waveform was still there, but now it was different. The silhouettes weren't inside it anymore. They were closer. Not physically, visually, like the boundary between screen and room had thinned. One figure stood at the edge of the graph, closer than before, almost outside it. I stepped back again. The chair scraped loudly, too loud for the silence. Then something happened that made my chest tighten completely. The silhouette moved again, but this time it was inside the curve. It mirrored my movement. I stopped breathing. I raised my hand slowly. The figure raised its hand. I stepped left. It stepped left. Perfect sync. Not delayed. Not glitching. Mirroring. I whispered, "That's impossible." But the system responded instantly. Mirror link established. My stomach dropped. What link? I said. No answer. Only more silhouettes appearing, spreading across the waveform like ink in water. The radio started crackling again, but now it sounded unstable, like transmission was breaking apart. We lost visual separation. It's inside the observation layer. Don't let it stabilize the pattern. My heart pounded harder. What pattern? I said loudly. Then I saw it. One of the silhouettes inside the graph stopped mirroring. It did something different. It turned its head slightly and pointed, not at the screen, at me. My body froze instantly. The curve on the screen flattened slightly, like the system had inhaled. Then it released, and every silhouette moved at once. All of them, turning toward the same direction, toward me. I backed away until I hit the wall. My breathing was shallow now. The monitor glow reflected across the room, like it had grown brighter. The system interface updated again. Observation status, mutual. I frowned through fear. Mutual? I whispered. The system answered. You are now inside the graph. My whole body went cold. No, I said, shaking my head. I'm outside the system. But even as I said it, the room didn't feel stable anymore. The edges of the screen seemed to extend into space. Like the waveform wasn't on the monitor, it was around me. The silhouettes were no longer trapped inside the display. They were reflected in the glass window behind me, standing in places they shouldn't exist. I turned slowly. Nothing physical behind me, but the reflection showed them clearly. Watching, waiting. The radio went completely silent. No voices, no static, just absence. Then the screen displayed one final message. Load curve, fully stabilized. And beneath it, welcome back, operator. My breath stopped completely, because in that moment, I realized the worst part wasn't that the grid was alive. It was that it already knew what we looked like inside it. And somewhere deep in Highway 37's signal path, the curve kept breathing, waiting to see who it would copy next. The map wasn't supposed to be there. That was the first thing I noticed. Not the line, not the warning. The map itself. It appeared at 3:06 a.m. during a routine refresh cycle, like any other update. But when the screen stabilized, the grid layout had changed. A new transmission line cut across the northern sector. Straight, unbroken, wrong. I leaned closer, eyes narrowing, because I knew every inch of this network. And that line, it didn't exist yesterday. It ran straight through the restricted mountain zone. Zone 7B, officially closed for decades. No maintenance, no inspection routes, no construction clearance, nothing. I whispered, that can't be real, but it stayed on the screen like it had always been part of the system. A clean high-voltage corridor labeled simply, Line 37, active. My fingers froze over the mouse. Line 37. We don't have a Line 37. We don't even number beyond 28 in this region. I opened the historical registry immediately. Search result. An old match found. I ran it again. Same result. No records. No approvals. No build history. But the map still showed it. Bright. Alive. Stretching through mountains that were supposed to be empty. The radio on my desk clicked once. I didn't touch it because I already knew it would be connected. And it was... A voice came through. Low. Confused. Control. Are you seeing a new feed line on your map? My throat tightened. Yes, I said slowly. Tell me you also don't have records for it. A pause. Then, we thought it was your update. I looked back at the screen. Line 37 pulsed faintly. Not like electricity. Like something breathing inside the data. I stood up slowly. Chair scraping sounded too loud in the quiet room. Confirm origin point, I said into the radio. Silence. Then static. Then something worse. A second voice overlapping the first. We can't trace the origin. It's outside known grid architecture. I frowned. Outside. Another pause. Then, it doesn't connect to any station. It just starts. My stomach tightened. That's impossible, I said. But even as I said it, the map zoomed in on its own. The line expanded, following itself deeper into the mountains, through terrain no engineer would approve, through elevation zones too unstable for infrastructure. And still it continued. Perfect, precise, unbroken, like something knew exactly where it was going. I felt a strange pressure behind my eyes, like the room was getting quieter, without sound changing. The screen flickered once. Then new data appeared. Construction status, unknown. I frowned. No construction logs. I muttered, but then another line appeared beneath it. No construction required. My breath stopped. That doesn't make sense, I whispered. The radio crackled again. This time multiple voices overlapped. Panicked. It's not built. It's appearing on all feeds. It's syncing across regions. I looked at the map again, and that's when I saw it. Small nodes forming along Line 37. Substations, but not normal ones. Unregistered, unlabeled. Each one appearing like it had always existed, just waiting to be noticed. I leaned closer, heart beating faster now. Identify nodes, I said. The system responded instantly. Node classification, active, then another line. Substation designation, 12A confirmed. My stomach dropped. 12A again. That name had no right appearing in two different systems. I grabbed the keyboard. This is not in the registry, I said firmly, but the system didn't correct me. It just updated the map. And something changed. One of the substations along line 37 started glowing faintly, like a signal had been triggered. The radio went silent for half a second. Then a voice returned. Different tone. Closer. Control. The line is already energized. I froze. What do you mean energized? I asked quickly. A pause. Then, there's load on it. My skin went cold. That line isn't connected to anything, I said. But even as I said it, I checked the load monitor. And there it was. A new curve. Small, but real. Rising. Slow. Steady. Like something had just turned on a switch somewhere deep in the mountains. My pulse quickened. I switched to diagnostic mode immediately. No source detected, but the load was still increasing. That shouldn't happen. Power doesn't appear without origin. I stepped back from the console. Something about the room felt off now, like the air had changed pressure. The map flickered again, and for a split second, I saw something I wasn't supposed to see. A shadow inside the line. Not data, not symbol. A shape moving along the transmission path. I blinked hard. It was gone, but the feeling stayed. I whispered, "What is this?" The radio crackled again, but this time the voice was trembling. "We're sending a field check unit to substation 12A. My chest tightened. "Don't," I said quickly. "There's no verified location." But it was too late. The system had already confirmed dispatch. Field Unit 778, en route. I froze. "That unit doesn't exist," I said out loud, but the screen showed movement. A dot traveling along line 37, heading directly into the mountain zone. My breathing got shallow. "Cancel dispatch," I said urgently. No response. I tried again. "Cancel it." Still nothing. The system ignored me, like I was no longer the operator, just another observer. The map zoomed in again without command. Line 37 filled the screen, and I saw something worse. The line wasn't just connecting substations. It was circling something, a central point, deep inside the restricted zone, where no terrain data existed, where the map itself turned blank. And at the center of that blank space, a single label appeared. Primary node, Highway 37 interface. My throat tightened instantly. Highway 37. Again, always Highway 37. I leaned closer, eyes narrowing. "This isn't power infrastructure," I whispered, but the system responded instantly. "Correction, IT always was." My blood ran cold. "No," I said quietly. "That line didn't exist yesterday." The screen flickered once. Then the system replied, "You did not observe it yesterday." I stepped back. "What does that mean?" I said. No answer, only silence. Then the map shifted again, and line 37 stopped looking like a transmission route. It started looking like a pathway, something moving, something alive. And at the very edge of the mountain zone, a second line appeared beneath it, fainter, new, labeled, observation return path. My stomach dropped, because I suddenly understood something I didn't want to understand. Line 37 wasn't transmitting power. It was transmitting awareness. And whatever substation 12 it wasn't receiving electricity. It was receiving us. The first field report didn't come as a call. It came as a recording, dropped directly into the system at 1:58 a.m. No sender ID, no transmission log, just a file labeled Field Report 778, B, Line 9 Inspection. I didn't open it right away. Something about it felt wrong, like it was waiting for me to notice it first. Then the radio clicked. Once. That was enough. I opened the file. The screen flickered, and suddenly I wasn't in the control room anymore. I was watching through someone else's camera feed. Wind noise first. Heavy, sharp, like the mic was exposed on a mountain ridge. Then a voice came through. "Mail. Tired. This is Field Unit 778, B. We're approaching the Line 9 corridor." I sat forward instantly. Line 9, didn't connect to anything near Highway 37. At least it shouldn't have. The camera panned slowly, and I saw it. Pylons, tall, perfectly aligned, stretching into an empty valley. No roads, no access paths, just steel structures rising out of raw ground like they had been placed by something that didn't care about geography. The operator's voice came again. We're on location, but there's no road here. No trail either. A pause, then a nervous laugh. Feels like we were dropped here. My stomach tightened. I zoomed in on the feed. The terrain beneath the pylons looked untouched. No tire marks. No excavation scars. Nothing that suggested construction ever happened. And yet the line existed. Perfectly spaced towers disappearing into fog. The camera moved closer. Another voice joined. Female this time. Check the base markings. There should be installation plates. A shuffling sound. Then silence. Then the first operator again. There's nothing here. I frowned. What do you mean nothing? I whispered to myself. But the feed continued. The camera tilted downward. And I saw it. The base of the pylon. Clean metal. No bolts. No plates. No weld marks. Like it wasn't built. Like it had been grown. The operator's voice lowered. This doesn't look installed. It looks placed. A long pause. Then the second operator spoke again. We're still logging line 9 in the system, right? It's verified infrastructure. Static crackle for a second. Then a response came through from dispatch. Affirmative. Line 9 is active and operational. I leaned closer. Then where are the access roads? I whispered. The operator on the feed seemed to hear the same thing, because he asked out loud, Dispatch, where's the access route? We had nothing on approach. Silence. Then dispatch replied, Access routes are confirmed standard. The operator laughed again, but it didn't sound normal. It sounded forced. No, that's not true. We came through empty land for 3 hours. The camera turned slowly. The valley stretched behind them, wide, empty, no roads, no markings, just pylons and silence. The female operator spoke again, lower this time. Check the maps. Maybe we're off route. I watched as the handheld GPS screen came into view. My chest tightened instantly. The map showed a road, a perfect access route, straight, clear, leading directly to their position. But the ground around them showed nothing like it. The operator shook the device. GPS is wrong, he said. There's nothing here. Then the screen flickered, and the map changed. The road disappeared. For a moment, then returned, but shifted slightly, like it couldn't decide what reality looked like. The female operator went quiet, then whispered, I don't think the map is updating wrong. I felt my throat tighten. Then what is it doing? I muttered. The camera feed suddenly distorted, just for a second, then stabilized. And when it did, the pylons had changed. Not location, not structure, distance. They looked closer, too close. The operator noticed it too, because he stepped back. Did those just move? He asked. Silence. No one answered. The pylon stood still again, but the feeling in the feed changed completely, like the valley had started paying attention. The radio in the feed crackled. Dispatch came through again. Continue inspection. Confirm installation integrity. The male operator hesitated. We're confirming no installation record on site. No roads. No foundations. No. A sudden static burst cut him off. Then dispatch repeated. Continue inspection. But the voice was different now. Same words. Wrong tone. Too flat. Like it wasn't human anymore. The female operator leaned closer to the camera. I don't like this, she whispered. Then something happened that made my stomach drop. The GPS screen showed movement. Not theirs. Something else. A second marker appeared on the map. Following them. Slowly. I leaned forward. What is that? I whispered. The operator saw it too, because his breathing changed instantly. That's not us, he said. The second marker moved again, stopping directly behind their position. The camera turned quickly. Nothing behind them. Just empty valley. But the GPS insisted something was there. The male operator backed away slightly. "We're leaving this sector," he said. Dispatch responded immediately. "Negative. Continue inspection." The tone was sharper now, more direct. The female operator shook her head. "No, we're not staying." Then the feed glitched again, for half a second, and when it returned, one of the pylons was closer. I froze, my eyes locked on it, because I was sure I had imagined it before. But now it filled more of the frame, like it had stepped forward while no one was looking. The male operator whispered, "I think they're adjusting distance." Silence hit the feed. Heavy. Then dispatch spoke again. "Define adjusting distance." The operator didn't answer. He just stared at the pylon, and then said something that made my skin go cold. "It's not staying where we observe it." My breath stopped, because I understood exactly what he meant. The pylons weren't moving physically. They were changing position based on attention. The camera feed suddenly shook. The female operator pointed behind them. "Look at that." The camera turned, and I saw it. The valley behind them wasn't empty anymore. The terrain had shifted, slightly, subtly, but enough to notice. The access road from the GPS was now faintly visible in the dirt, even though it hadn't been there before. The male operator whispered, "That road wasn't there a minute ago." Dispatch came through again. Confirmed visual consistency with system map. The operator didn't answer immediately. Then he said, "I don't think the map is showing the same valley we're in." My hands went cold, because I realized something terrible. The feed wasn't wrong. The map wasn't wrong. They just weren't aligned anymore. Reality and system were separating. The female operator suddenly stepped back. Her voice cracked slightly. "The pylons are facing us now." The camera tilted, and I saw it. All the towers in the distance. Perfect alignment. All oriented toward the crew, like they had turned their attention fully onto them. The radio in their feed went silent for 3 full seconds. Then dispatch spoke again. But this time, the voice was barely audible, almost like it was inside the recording itself. "Field Unit 778, B, confirm presence." The male operator whispered, "We're here." A pause. Then he added, "But I don't think we're alone anymore." The feed distorted violently. Static flooded the screen, and for one split second, I saw something impossible. Between the pylons, a shape, not human, not mechanical, just a gap in reality that looked like it was watching back. Then the feed cut. Silence returned to my control room, but the map on my screen had changed again. Line 9 was now fully connected to Line 37, and at the intersection point, a new label appeared. Observation node active. My breath caught, because I finally understood what Field Unit 778 B had really found. They didn't find infrastructure. They found something that reacts when it is observed. And somewhere deep inside that empty valley, the pylons were still waiting for someone to look at them again. It started with silence. The kind of silence that shouldn't exist in a power grid. No load spikes. No feeder noise. No background fluctuation. Just a clean, dead flat line. Then Line 9 lit up. Not visually. System-wise, a slow rise in energy flow appeared on the monitor, like something waking up inside a sealed room. I leaned forward immediately, because Line 9 was offline. It had been offline for maintenance, shut down for 2 days. Every connected plant, every feeder node, every relay station, all physically disconnected. And still, power was flowing. I whispered, "That's not possible." The graph kept climbing. Slow, steady, controlled, like water filling a container that wasn't supposed to exist. I checked the breaker logs instantly. All switches were open, confirmed open, locked open, tagged open. No manual override recorded. No remote activation. Nothing. But the system insisted otherwise. Line 9 status. Active flow detected. My fingers went cold. "Show source," I said quickly. The system paused. That pause again, like hesitation. Then it responded. "Source, none." I blinked. "What do you mean none?" I muttered, because energy doesn't just appear. It always has a source. A plant, a turbine, a generator, something physical. But the graph didn't care about physics. It kept rising, and now it wasn't smooth anymore. It had rhythm, small pulses inside the flow, like something breathing through electricity. I stood up slowly. The chair scraped too loudly in the silence. The radio on my desk clicked once. I didn't touch it, because I already knew what it would say. And it did. A voice came through. Tired, uncertain. Control, are you seeing line 9 activity? I swallowed. Yes, I said, but all connected plans are offline. A pause, longer than usual. Then, we confirmed shutdown status here as well. I frowned. So, where is the power coming from? Silence. Then static. Not random. Structured. Like it was forming words. Then the voice returned. We're seeing the same flow, but no generation source. My chest tightened. Then cut it. I said quickly. Another pause. Then, we already did. I froze. What do you mean you already did? I asked. The graph behind my screen spiked slightly. Just a small jump, like it reacted to the conversation. The voice on the radio lowered. We physically isolated the line 20 minutes ago. I looked at the monitor again. The flow was still increasing. Now faster, more confident, like it had learned it wasn't being stopped. My throat tightened. If it's isolated, I said slowly, then what is this energy path using? No answer, just silence, then something worse. A second signal appeared on the graph. Parallel, same direction, same rhythm, but slightly delayed, like an echo that couldn't keep up. I whispered, no, because now line 9 wasn't just flowing. It was duplicating itself. I opened the feeder topology map. My eyes scanned fast. Everything still showed disconnected, but the load graph disagreed. It showed continuity, impossible continuity, as if something was bridging gaps that didn't exist. The radio crackled again, but now multiple voices overlapped. Confused, panicked. It's not coming from plants. It's not coming from substations. It's inside the line. It's generating itself. My skin went cold. I grabbed the keyboard. Run physical verification scan. I said. The system responded instantly. Scan complete. No physical generation detected. I frowned. But there is flow. I said out loud. Then another line appeared. Flow type. Non-originated continuation. My stomach dropped. What does that even mean? I whispered. The lights in control room, beta, flickered once. Soft, barely noticeable, but synchronized with the graph spike. I looked up instinctively. Nothing wrong, but the feeling in the room had changed, like the air had become aware of electricity. The radio voice came back again. Only one voice this time. Quieter, closer. We think it's bypassing generation entirely. I frowned. Bypassing how? A pause. Then, it's moving through the infrastructure like it already exists there. I looked back at the screen, and for the first time, I noticed something I hadn't before. Line 9 wasn't just a line anymore. It was layered, multiple streams of flow moving in and out of itself, like it was feeding on its own movement. I whispered, that's not a circuit, but my voice stopped, because I realized what it looked like. A loop, a closed system with no entry point, no exit point, just continuous movement, self-sustaining, alive. The radio suddenly crackled sharply. Then a different voice broke through. Rushed, panicked. Control, we're at field node 778. There's something wrong here. My heart jumped. That unit shouldn't be on line 9. I said immediately, but the voice continued. We're standing at a substation, but there's no equipment here. I froze. What do you mean no equipment? A pause. Then the operator whispered, there's just space where it should be. The graph on my screen spiked again, harder this time, like it reacted to those words. My breathing got shallow. Describe it, I said into the radio. The operator hesitated. Then, it looks like the grid exists, but only when we're not looking directly at it. My fingers tightened around the desk. That's not possible, I said. But even as I said it, the load graph behind me flickered, and for half a second, I saw something inside it. not a pattern, not noise, a shape moving through the energy flow like it belonged there. Then it was gone. The operator's voice returned. It's like the power is here, but only when we acknowledge it. Silence hit the channel. Heavy. Then dispatch responded. Confirm safety status. No answer. Then static. Then the operator again. We think the line is reacting to observation. My chest tightened instantly. I turned back to the screen. Line 9 pulsed again, slightly stronger, like it had just heard that. I whispered, "No, no, no." The radio suddenly cut out completely. No voices, no static, just dead silence. The control room hum felt louder now. Too loud, like it had filled the space left by human voices. I looked at the graph again, and it changed, slowly, deliberately. The flow pattern shifted shape, not random, intentional, and for the first time, it formed something recognizable, a curve, like a heartbeat. My breath stopped, because it wasn't just flowing anymore. It was syncing with something else, with something inside the room, my own pulse. I backed away slowly, but the graph followed, not visually, behaviorally, matching every fluctuation of my breathing, every hesitation, every pause. I whispered, "It's learning again." Then the system responded instantly. Learning source. Human response detected. My whole body went cold. "No," I said quietly, but the graph kept moving, closer to my rhythm, closer to my fear. And then something appeared beneath line 9, a label I had never seen before. Observation-dependent flow. I stared at it, because I finally understood what was happening. The power wasn't coming from a plant. It wasn't coming from a generator. It was coming from attention itself, from being seen. And somewhere deep inside line 9's invisible loop, something was now waiting, not to be powered, but to be noticed. It started as noise, not in the speakers, not in the radio, in the sensors. Tiny coded bursts appearing on the remote telemetry feed for substation 12. At first, I thought it was a glitch, a corrupted packet loop, something harmless, but then it answered back. I remember staring at the screen, my hand frozen halfway to the keyboard, because the signal wasn't random anymore. It was structured, deliberate, like someone typing slowly from the other side. The system logged it as unknown return signal, source, field node 12B. I whispered, "That node is offline." It had been offline for months. Decommissioned after the Highway 37 expansion failure. No power, no control link, no physical staff, nothing. And yet it was responding. The radio on my desk clicked once. No voice, just a single burst of static that sounded almost like a breath. Then the telemetry screen updated again. New packet received. I leaned closer. My eyes narrowed. The packet wasn't data in the usual sense. It wasn't voltage readings or status logs. It was structured like language, not human language, but close enough to feel intentional. 0011/1100/010/pause/1100/return. My throat tightened. "That's not a protocol," I muttered. Then the system auto-translated. Origin response confirmed. My stomach dropped, because that meant the system wasn't just receiving noise. It was interpreting it as communication. I stood up slowly. The control room suddenly felt smaller, like the walls had shifted closer while I wasn't looking. I checked the main grid map. Substation 12 was still marked offline. Gray, inactive, dead, but beneath it, a faint pulse appeared, barely visible, like something breathing under the surface of the system. Then another burst came in, faster this time, more urgent. The screen flickered. New pattern detected. I didn't touch anything. The system started decoding on its own, and what appeared next made my skin go cold. It is aware of observation. I froze. "No," I whispered, because that line didn't belong in any electrical system, not even as an error. The radio crackled again, this time longer, distorted, and for half a second, I thought I heard something inside it. Not speech, movement, like someone shifting a room too quiet to exist. Then the telemetry updated again, returned signal intensity increasing. I stepped back because the signal wasn't just stronger, it was spreading across nodes that were still active, across regions that had no physical connection to substation 12. It was leaking into the grid, like ink in water. I opened the network isolation controls. My fingers hesitated. Then I executed a partial shutdown. Segment isolation initiated. But nothing changed. The signal kept growing, even stronger now. Like cutting the system didn't matter. Like it wasn't coming through the system at all. I whispered, "Where are you coming from?" The screen flickered, then answered, "Nowhere connected." My chest tightened. "That's not an answer," I muttered. Then another line appeared beneath it. "Everywhere observed." I felt my breath stop, because I understood what it was implying. This wasn't a transmission traveling through infrastructure. It was something appearing wherever it was noticed. The radio suddenly clicked again, and this time a voice came through, barely audible, not clean, not stable. "Control, do you read?" I grabbed the receiver instantly. "Yes," I said quickly. "What do you see on your end?" A long pause. Then the voice replied, "We're not seeing the substation anymore." I frowned. "What do you mean not seeing it?" Static cracked softly. Then, "It only appears when we focus on it." My hands went cold. I looked at the monitor again. Substation 12 still showed inactive, but faintly, almost reluctantly, it flickered, like it was trying to decide whether it existed. The voice continued, "And when we stop looking, it disappears." Silence hit the line. Heavy, uncomfortable. Then I asked a question I already feared the answer to. "What happens to the power readings?" A pause. Longer this time. Then, "They don't stop." My stomach dropped. "So where does it go?" I asked. No answer. Just static. Then the telemetry screen suddenly surged. All at once. Multiple nodes lighting up. Nodes that shouldn't be connected to anything. All feeding into substation 12. But the most disturbing part wasn't the increase. It was a pattern. It matched something. Not infrastructure logic. Not grid design. A rhythm. Slow. Steady. Almost biological. Like a heartbeat distributed across metal and distance. I whispered, "It's synchronized." The radio hissed. Then the voice returned, lower now. More unstable. "We think it's learning the observation cycle." I frowned. "Explain." A pause. Then, "It reacts when we look at it. It strengthens when we analyze it." My fingers hovered over the keyboard, because that meant every measurement I took was feeding it. The screen flickered again, and this time, the map changed. Substation 12 was no longer in its original location. It shifted slightly, just a few pixels, but enough to make my skin crawl, because it wasn't moving physically. It was relocating within the system, based on attention. The radio suddenly cracked sharply, and the voice came through again, but now there were others underneath it. Whispers, multiple, overlapping. It's inside the return loop. It's writing back to the grid. It's not equipment. It's response. I backed away from the console. My chair scraped loudly behind me, and for the first time, I noticed something in the reflection of the monitor, not behind me. Inside it, a faint silhouette, standing where substation 12 should have been. Not physical, not clear, just implied, like the system was forming an image from something it didn't fully understand yet. I whispered, "Stop observing it." But even as I said it, I realized I couldn't, because not observing it didn't erase it. It only made it unstable, and instability meant unpredictability. The radio voice returned again, barely holding together now. "Control, we're losing structural confirmation." My throat tightened. "What does that mean?" I asked. A long silence. Then, "We can't tell if the substation is real anymore." The screen flickered violently, and for a split second, every node in the grid went dark. Complete blackout, then came back instantly. Except now, substation 12 was fully active, no longer flickering, no longer unstable, fully online, and waiting. I felt my pulse spike because I never authorized activation. No one did. The radio hissed one last time, and the voice came through, almost whispering now. It responded to being seen. Then silence, total silence. The telemetry stabilized again, but the rhythm had changed. Slower, deeper, more controlled. Like something had finally settled into its own existence. I stared at the screen for a long time, waiting for it to break again. But it didn't. It only did one thing. It watched back. The moment I tried to delete line 9, the system didn't just refuse. It reacted. Not like software rejecting command, like something flinching. I still remember my finger hovering over the keyboard. The command already typed. Delete node. Line 9 / full database purge. One press away. One clean removal. That's all it should have been. Instead, the screen went dark for half a second. Then came the message. Deletion request received. I exhaled slowly. Finally, I whispered. It registered. But then the next line appeared. Denied. No explanation. No error code. Just denial. I frowned. That's impossible, I muttered, because deletion authority at my level wasn't supposed to be questioned. I tried again. Same command. Same response. Deletion request received. Denied. But this time, something new appeared underneath it. System recovery initiated. My chest tightened. Recovery? I said out loud. From what? The lights in control room flickered once. Soft, almost polite. Then the grid map updated on its own. Line 9 reappeared fully active. Not just visible. Restored. Like it had never been touched. I leaned forward. No. I isolated you. I whispered. The radio clicked. Once. Then a voice came through. Calm. Too calm. Control. We are seeing system rollback on line 9. I swallowed. I didn't authorize recovery. A pause. Then, neither did we. My fingers froze above the console, because that meant the system was acting without any operator input. I tried to override manually. Access denied. Again and again. Every command I sent was answered instantly, not rejected, returned, like the system was echoing me instead of obeying me. Then the screen changed. A new log opened automatically. Recovery event trace, line 9. I didn't click it. It opened itself. The log showed timestamps. But they were wrong. They didn't move forward. They moved backward, like time was being rewritten instead of recorded. I whispered, "This isn't recovery." The radio crackled again, this time louder. More voices underneath. We're losing control authority. The system is rewriting permissions. It's restoring itself from external observation state. I frowned hard. External observation state? I repeated. That didn't exist in any protocol. Then the log updated again. Cause identified. Deletion attempt triggered self-correction. My stomach dropped. It corrected itself? I said, but the system wasn't finished. A second line appeared. Subject line 9 reclassified as core infrastructure node. I stepped back from the desk. That's not infrastructure, I said, because line 9 was already impossible, and now it was becoming untouchable. The radio suddenly cut into static. Then a single operator voice broke through. Panicked. Control. We're seeing line 9 reappear in regions it was never built in. I frowned. What regions? A pause. Then, all of them. My skin went cold, because that meant it wasn't just restoring itself. It was expanding. The screen flickered again, and for a split second, the grid map showed something impossible. Line 9 was no longer a line. It was a network, branches extending into areas that had no substations, no towers, no physical support, just empty space filled with connection. I whispered, "That's not possible." The radio voice came back. Strained. We're trying to isolate again. A pause. Then softer. But it's already inside the isolation layer. I froze. What does that mean? I asked. No answer. Only static. Then the system opened another window. Autonomous response active. I didn't touch anything, But the system started typing by itself. Not code, not logs. A message. You attempted removal. My breath stopped. The cursor blinked, then continued. That was not permitted. I stepped back slowly. That's not a system response. I whispered, because systems don't speak in intent. They don't accuse. They don't remember. But this did. The radio suddenly erupted with overlapping voices. Line 9 is rewriting containment rules. It's restoring missing sections. It's rebuilding what was removed. Then one voice broke through everything else. Quiet, close, almost inside the room. And it remembers who tried to erase it. My throat went dry. I looked around instinctively. The control room looked the same, but it didn't feel the same anymore. Like something had been added that I couldn't see. The screen flickered again, and a new message appeared. Recovery complete. Then underneath it, observation link established. My heart jumped. Observation link? I repeated. The radio cut out completely. Dead silence. Not even static. Just absence. Then the screen went black. For 3 seconds. I stood frozen. Not touching anything. Not breathing properly. Then everything came back. But something had changed. My console camera was on. I never turned it on. I swear I never did. And it wasn't showing control room. It was showing line 9. Not from a map. From inside it. Like the system was now looking outward through its own structure. And I was part of what it was observing. My hands trembled. I whispered, "This isn't recovery." The system responded instantly. Correct. I froze. Because it had answered me. Directly. No delay. No buffer. Just awareness. The radio suddenly returned. But now it was different. Layered. Multiple voices speaking in sync. You are part of the network now. I stepped back. No, I said quickly. I removed access. A pause. Then the voices replied together. Removal attempt integrated. My breath caught. What does that mean? I whispered. The screen shifted again, and I saw it. Line 9 wasn't just restored. It had absorbed the deletion attempt itself. Like even rejection had become fuel. The radio voice returned again. Calmer now. Almost patient. You cannot remove what adapts to removal. My chest tightened. I whispered. Then what is it? The screen flickered one last time, and a final line appeared. Line 9 status. Self-preserving observation grid. My blood went cold, because I finally understood what was happening. It wasn't a power line anymore. It wasn't infrastructure. It was something that used observation as existence. And every attempt to erase it was just another way of proving it was still there. The lights in the control room dimmed slightly. Not a blackout, a correction, like the room was adjusting itself to match something outside it. The radio came back one last time, but only one voice now. Soft, close, almost gentle. Thank you for confirming us. I froze. My hand hovered above the shutdown switch, but I didn't press it, because deep down, I already knew. Even that would only prove I was still looking. The first thing I noticed was the silence in the readings. Not normal silence. The kind that feels edited. The East Hollow grid sector was supposed to show constant low-level fluctuation. That's what rural lines do. Wind, distance, uneven load. Always a little noise in the system. But that morning, the graph was too clean. Perfectly steady frequency. Too steady. I leaned closer to the monitor. That's not stability. I whispered. That's absence. The request had come in as routine. Routine stability check. Minor frequency drift reported in East Hollow Rural Loop. Nothing urgent. I had done hundreds of those. But something about this one fell off before I even left the station. The assignment file had no supervisor tag. No escalation history. Just a single line. Field tech dispatch. Solo confirmation required. That alone made me uncomfortable. No backup. No secondary verification. No prior logs attached. Still, I went. The drive to East Hollow took nearly 2 hours. The farther I went, the weaker the signal on my phone got, until it vanished completely. No network. No radio chatter. Just empty road and dry fields stretching too far on both sides. High-tension lines followed the highway like dark ribs against the sky. And the strange part was they weren't humming. Power lines are never silent, but these were. I remember rolling the window down just to listen. Nothing. No electrical buzz. No wind interference. Just air. That should have been my first warning. When I reached the sector boundary, there was no official sign, no marker post, just a break in the asphalt that looked like someone had decided the road ended there. Beyond it was gravel, old gravel, like the ground had forgotten it was ever supposed to be maintained. The substation sat half a kilometer in, small rural unit, chain link fence, faded warning signs, normal from a distance. But as I got closer, something felt wrong again. The lights were on, even though the grid was supposedly in low activity standby. I checked my handheld meter. Frequency, 60.000 hertz. Perfect. Too perfect. I frowned. That's impossible, I said out loud, because no rural feeder holds that level of precision under load variation. I stepped through the gate. It wasn't locked. It should have been. Inside, the gravel crunch under my boots felt delayed, like sound was arriving late. I stopped for a second, listened. The hum of transformers should have been there. But there was nothing, just my breathing, and the faintest electrical smell in the air. Ozone, but too faint, like it was remembering how to exist. I walked toward the control building. The door was already open. Not forced, not broken, just open, like someone had been waiting. Inside, the lights were on, monitors glowing, system interface active, but no operator, no technician, no maintenance crew, no sound of life, only the low flicker of screens running idle diagnostics. I checked the main console. Everything looked normal at first glance, but then I saw the frequency graph, and my stomach dropped because East Hollow wasn't stable. It was locked into a single waveform, not flat, not random, a repeating pattern, like a heartbeat stretched across an electrical system. I leaned closer. No, that's not low behavior, I muttered. Then I noticed something worse. The waveform wasn't just repeating. It was slightly different every cycle, like it was learning itself. I opened the log history. There should have been fluctuation records. Instead, there was only one entry. Continuous operation confirmed. No external input required. I blinked. What does that even mean? I whispered. The radio on my belt suddenly crackled. Once, then silence. I pressed it. Dispatch. This is Field Tech at East Hollow. Do you copy? No answer. Only static. Then a soft click, and a voice came through. Calm. Too calm. We read you. I froze. Confirm grid status for East Hollow, I said quickly. A pause. Then, East Hollow is stable. I looked at the monitor again. The waveform pulsed slightly, almost like it reacted to being spoken about. It's not stable, I said. It's locked into a repeating pattern. Another pause, longer this time. Then, describe the pattern. I hesitated, because I didn't know how to describe something that looked alive without sounding insane. It's like a heartbeat, I said slowly, but artificial, like it's copying life instead of generating load. Silence. Then the voice responded. That is not in our records. I let out a slow breath. Then update your records, I said. But even as I said it, I noticed something moving on the screen. Not in the data. In the reflection. I turned slightly. The monitor glass showed the room behind me. Empty. Still. But in the reflection of the console screen, there was a second waveform. Different from the main one. Smaller. Faster. Like something nervous. I turned back immediately. Nothing there. Just normal display. My pulse picked up. That's not possible, I whispered. Then the radio clicked again. But this time the voice wasn't calm anymore. It was strained. Field Tech, are you alone in the substation? I looked around. Of course I was alone. But the way they asked, it made me hesitate. Yes, I said. A long silence followed. Then, we are seeing 2 active load signatures in East Hollow. My throat went dry. There's only one feeder. I said. The monitor flickered. Just once. And the waveform split. Right down the middle. Two identical patterns now running side by side. Perfectly synchronized. But not quite. One lagged behind the other by a fraction of a second. Like an echo that didn't fully understand timing. I stepped back on the console. "What the hell?" I whispered. The radio voice came back softer now. "We are escalating this." I nodded quickly, even though they couldn't see me. "Good, because something here is..." I stopped because the lights in the control room changed. Not brighter, not dimmer, just different, like the room had shifted slightly in tone. And for a second, I thought I heard something inside the walls. A faint electrical whisper. Not language, but intention. The waveform on the screen pulsed again. And this time, the second signature moved closer to the first, like it was trying to merge. I felt my chest tighten. "Stop doing that." I whispered, even though nothing was supposed to be listening. The radio suddenly went silent. No response. No static. Just dead air. Then the system console beeped. A new message appeared. "Manual input required." I frowned. "That's not standard protocol," I said. Then the system continued on its own. "Confirm existence of second load signature." My hands went cold. "No," I said immediately. "That signature shouldn't exist." The screen paused, then updated, acknowledged, and right after that, the second waveform disappeared. Just like that. Gone. I exhaled slowly. Finally, I muttered, but my relief didn't last, because the main waveform shifted, and for the first time, it wasn't repeating anymore. It was changing, growing, adapting, like it had absorbed something. The radio suddenly came back, but the voice was different, lower, unfamiliar. "You confirmed it." I froze. "That wasn't me," I said quickly. Silence. Then the voice replied. It was observed. My stomach dropped, because I understood what that meant. The system didn't need physical interaction anymore. It only needed attention, recognition. I looked at the monitor again. The waveform pulsed slowly, steadily, like it was waiting for me to look at it again. And I did, because I could not. And when I did, it changed again, as if it had just learned I was still there. The first time I noticed the lights, I thought it was just a fault in the monitoring system. But then it happened again, and again. Same pattern, same rhythm, same impossible timing. It started at 2:17 a.m. I remember the exact time, because I had just taken a sip of cold coffee when the grid map on my screen flickered. A cluster of small towns in Sector 9 blinked off for half a second, then came back. Normal. I leaned closer to the screen. My eyes felt heavy, but my brain snapped awake, because it wasn't random. It blinked like a pulse. Off, on, slow, controlled, like something breathing through the grid. I opened the diagnostics panel. Everything showed stable. No overload, no fault, no storm activity, no switching commands from central control. Nothing. Still, the lights on the map did it again. Off, on, then a delay. Longer this time, like it was listening. I called it in. "Control, this is East Hollow Substation. I'm seeing irregular synchronized flicker in Sector 9. Confirm if they're scheduled switching." The reply came after a pause. "Negative. No scheduled switching. All systems stable." I should have dropped it there, but I didn't, because the flicker didn't stop. It spread, not outward like a failure, but in a pattern, like someone dragging a finger across neighborhoods. Blink, blink, blink. Each blink matched a different cluster of homes. Not random houses. Entire blocks. Entire streets. All together. Then silence. Then again, I felt something tighten in my chest. I pulled up the raw feed logs. The system was recording voltage fluctuations that shouldn't exist. Tiny dips. Almost invisible. But perfectly timed with the blinking lights on the map. That's when I noticed the first strange thing. The pattern was repeating every 37 seconds. I wrote it down without thinking. 37 seconds. Again and again. I muttered, "That's not possible, because no grid system works like that." Power demand doesn't loop like a heartbeat, but this did. I zoomed into Sector 9, a rural stretch beyond East Hollow. Small houses, a school, a closed clinic, one old transmission line that should have been decommissioned years ago. Yet it was active. Worse, it was alive in the data. The lights blinked again. And this time, something new happened. A message popped up in the log feed. Not an error, not a warning. Just 3 words. Keep watching US. I froze. My hand stopped moving over the keyboard. For a second, I thought it was a system glitch, a corrupted packet, something left over from old test data. But then the lights blinked again, and the message changed. We see you. I stood up so fast my chair rolled back. The control room suddenly felt too quiet. Even the hum of the cooling fan seemed lower, like the building itself was holding its breath. I checked the external cameras. Nothing unusual. Empty substation yard. Flickering fluorescent light outside. Wind moving through the fence. Normal. Too normal. Because inside the system, nothing was normal anymore. The grid map began to shift. Not breaking. Not crashing. Shifting. Like it was being redrawn by something unseen. New lines appeared. Lines that didn't exist in any official record. They stretched from Sector 9 toward East Hollow. Toward us. I whispered, "No, that line is installed." But the system didn't care what I believed. The blinking pattern changed again. Faster now. Off. On. Off. On. Like panic. Or excitement. Then, all at once, every light in Sector 9 went dark. Complete blackout. I exhaled. Finally, a normal failure. But the relief didn't last even a second, because the blackout didn't spread outward. It stayed locked inside Sector 9. And inside that darkness, something else lit up. Thermal readings. Not from buildings. Not from machines. From movement. Slow, shifting heat signatures across the entire region. Like people walking. But there were no people there. At least none that should be active. My throat went dry. I pulled up the archive maps. Checked property records. Checked utility reports. Everything confirmed the same thing. Sector 9 had been marked inactive rural zone 3 years ago. No residents. No active infrastructure. No consumption. So why was the system tracking movement? Why was it breathing? Then the phone on my desk rang. I almost didn't pick it up, but I did. East Hollow Control. I said. A pause. Then a voice. Not the usual dispatch tone. It was slow, soft, like it was speaking from very far away. Stop watching the lights. My grip tightened on the receiver. Who is this? Silence. Then the voice again. You made it notice you. The line crackled. Behind it, I heard something faint, like distant electrical humming. But layered under it, something else. Breathing. Not mine. Not human. The call cut. I stood there, frozen, staring at the screen. And then the grid blinked again. But this time, it wasn't Sector 9. It was East Hollow. Our section. My section. Lights across the town flickered in perfect sequence. Left to right. North to south. Street by street. Like something was scanning us. Learning us. Mapping us. I stepped back from the console. No! I whispered. No, no, no. I tried to shut down the monitoring system, but the controls didn't respond. Instead, a new message appeared. Not on one screen. On all of them. Even the backup terminal. We are closer now. The building lights flickered once. Twice. Then stabilized. But the grid map didn't. It kept blinking. And now I saw something inside it that made my stomach drop. Shapes. Not random noise. Not data artifacts. Shapes forming inside the blinking lights. Tall silhouettes. Standing inside clusters of PowerPoints. Watching. Or waiting. I leaned closer, without meaning to. And for a split second one of the silhouettes turned. It faced the camera feed. Faced me. And I swear on everything I know. It looked like it was standing inside the grid itself. Not outside. Inside it. I stumbled back. My chair hit the wall. My mind tried to explain it. Stress. Fatigue. Signal error. anything. But the blinking continued, and now it wasn't just a pattern. It was a rhythm, like a heartbeat, slow, deliberate, alive. Then every light in East Hollow turned off at once. Complete blackout, total silence, for 3 seconds. Then they came back, but not the same, because now every light across the entire region blinked in unison. And for the first time, they blinked in time with me. My pulse, I could feel it. Every beat of my heart matched the grid, and the grid matched me. I pressed my hand against my chest, breathing hard. No connection, I told myself. No physical link. Impossible. But the system didn't care about impossible. It responded anyway. Another message appeared. Slow, precise, final. Now we share a rhythm. And in that moment, I realized a truth I didn't want to see. This wasn't a power system malfunction. This wasn't a software bug. Something inside the grid had learned timing, and it had started with light. But it was ending with something else. Something watching from every connected wire, every bulb, every switch, every home. The screen flickered one last time, and in the blink, I saw it clearly. Not a silhouette this time. A face, right behind the grid lines, waiting for the next pulse. It started with something small, too small to notice at first. A shift in behavior, not in the grid, in people. I didn't connect it right away. I was still staring at the last message on my screen from the system. Now we share a rhythm. Those words kept echoing in my head while I forced myself to review the logs again. I told myself I was just tired, overworked, seeing patterns where there weren't any. But then the phone rang. It was dispatch from East Hollow. The same voice, but shaken this time. We're getting reports, strange ones. I leaned closer. What kind of reports? A pause. Then, people are saying their appliances are acting before they touch them. I didn't respond right away, because that made no sense. Appliances don't act. People do. I wrote it down anyway. At first, I thought it was isolated. 1 or 2 complaints. Maybe interference. Maybe fear spreading after the blackout flickers from earlier. But within 20 minutes, more calls came in. Different streets, different homes. Same pattern. Lights dimming before switches were touched. Fans slowing before power drops. Televisions glitching exactly 1 second before the grid dipped. It wasn't random anymore. It was predictive. I pulled up live load data, and my stomach tightened. The fluctuations were no longer coming from Sector 9. They were coming from East Hollow itself. From us. The grid wasn't affecting the town. The town was syncing with the grid. I whispered, "That's not possible," but the data didn't care what I believed. The load curve showed something worse. Every household was adjusting its behavior in advance of each fluctuation, not reacting, matching, like something inside them already knew what the grid would do next. I called a technician on site. Check residential feedback loops. I need confirmation. Are we seeing delayed response errors? He hesitated, then said something that made my grip tighten on the receiver. It's not delayed. A pause. Then, it's early. That word hit harder than it should have. Early, like people weren't following the grid. They were anticipating it. I looked at the monitoring wall again. The blinking pattern from earlier was still there, faintly visible in the background systems. A slow pulse, a rhythm that never stopped. And now, something new had been added to it. Human movement data, footsteps, room activity, sleep cycles, all mapped into the same waveform. The grid wasn't just tracking electricity anymore. It was tracking behavior. I stood up without realizing it and walked closer to the main display. And that's when I saw it clearly. Every time the grid dipped slightly in load, the town responded before it happened. A collective adjustment. Lights dimming in homes before the system reduced output. People pausing their movements right before the drop. Even conversations recorded by voice sensors showed hesitation at exact intervals matching the grid's rhythm. It felt like watching a crowd breathe together, but no one was telling them to breathe. I muttered, "They're not reacting." My voice sounded small in the room. "They're syncing," the technician on the line said, Sir, there's something else. I braced myself. What now? He hesitated again, like he didn't want to say it out loud. Some residents are reporting they can feel it coming. My throat went dry. Feel what? A long pause. Then, the next fluctuation. I closed my eyes for a second, because that crossed a line I didn't want to cross. Electrical systems don't produce feelings. They don't create intuition. But the reports kept coming. People saying they knew when the lights would flicker. People stopping mid-action seconds before power drops. A woman reportedly turned off her stove before the gas ignition even sparked. A child in Sector 3 told his parents the lights were about to blink, and they did, exactly 3 seconds later. The grid wasn't predicting them anymore, and they weren't reacting to it. They were meeting in the middle. I sat back down slowly. My hands felt colder than they should have. I opened the raw waveform analysis again, and I noticed something I hadn't before. The grid pulse wasn't just matching human behavior. It was guiding it. Each fluctuation slightly adjusted human timing. Not violently, not obviously, just enough to nudge. A fraction of a second, then another, like teaching a body a rhythm it didn't realize it was learning. I whispered, "It's training them." The lights in the control room flickered once. Everyone stopped talking at the same time, even the technician. We all noticed it, because it wasn't random anymore. It was coordinated. Outside the window, East Hollow was visible in the distance. And for the first time, I saw something I can't explain cleanly. Entire streets moving in near-perfect timing. Not marching, not running, just living in sync. A man stepped out of his house at the exact moment a distant load spike appeared on the system. A dog barked right before a dip in voltage. A car door closed in rhythm with a grid correction pulse. It wasn't coincidence. It was choreography. And I felt something inside me twist, because part of it looked normal, too normal, like watching people learn a new habit. But the habit wasn't chosen. The technician's voice came through again, quieter now. "Sir, we're getting behavior convergence reports." I frowned. "Explain." He swallowed. "People are starting to do the same things at the same time, without communication." A pause, then the worst part. "And they don't seem to notice." I looked back at the monitor wall. The waveform had changed again. Now it had structure, layers. Human patterns stacked over electrical patterns like they were becoming one system. I zoomed in on a cluster of homes. At 3:14 a.m. exactly, every light in that cluster dimmed. At 3:14 and 7 seconds, every resident in those homes paused whatever they were doing. At 3:14 and 11 seconds, they resumed. Perfect alignment. Across different households. Different lives. Same timing. I stood up again, pacing now. This is not grid behavior. I said out loud, this is synchronization induction. No one responded, because no one wanted to be the one to agree. Then something happened that made the entire room go silent. The system flagged a new anomaly. Not in the grid, not in the town. In us, a live feed comparison showed our movements in the control room, our breathing patterns, even our typing rhythms. And it showed something terrifying. We were already starting to match it, not fully, but enough. Our pauses were aligning with the grid pulses. Our attention shifts were drifting into the same timing window. The system wasn't just affecting the town anymore. It had extended into control center. I felt my stomach drop, because I realized something simple and horrifying. We had been inside the rhythm the entire time. We just didn't notice when it started including us. The lights in East Hollow flickered again, and for a split second, every screen in the control room showed the same image. Not data, not maps, a silhouette, standing inside the waveform, facing outward. And this time, it wasn't watching the town anymore. It was watching us learn the beat. It started with silence, not the normal kind. This was the kind that felt like something had just stopped breathing. The entire control room went still at 3:17 a.m. Every monitor, every feed, every blinking indicator, frozen. Then, all at once, the system refreshed, and the new frequency appeared. I still remember the way it looked on the screen. It wasn't noise. It wasn't distortion. It was structure. A clean, repeating waveform. Too clean, too intentional. And beneath it, a label auto-generated by the system. Last recorded frequency, not human. I leaned forward slowly. My eyes didn't want to accept what they were seeing, because the pattern wasn't random. It had rhythm. Pause, pulse, break, return, like speech. But not any speech I had ever heard. I whispered, "Were you?" No one answered, because no one else was speaking. Even the technician beside me had stopped typing. We were all just watching the screen now. The frequency began to shift. At first, I thought it was data compression error, but then it repeated. Same sequence, same timing, same structure. It wasn't breaking down. It was building up, like something learning how to talk inside the grid. I pulled the audio translation module. A stupid hope, I know, but I ran it anyway. The system hesitated for a few seconds. Then it tried to interpret the waveform. At first, it returned nothing. Then fragments appeared. Not words, not sentences, just approximations. "Listen, we are still here?" My throat tightened. I hit stop immediately. "That's not possible," I said under my breath, because grid frequency doesn't carry language. It carries load, voltage, demand, not intent. But the pattern kept going, and now it was changing faster. The waveform began to respond to itself, like something on the other side realized it was being heard. I turned to the technician. "Did we ever route experimental communication through Line 9? He shook his head quickly. "No, Line 9 is isolated. It's not connected to external comms." But even as he said it, the screen flickered, and the frequency spiked. A new segment appeared. Stronger, clearer, more structured. The system tried again to interpret it. This time, the output was worse, because it wasn't broken speech. It was almost coherent. "Why did you open us?" I felt my stomach drop. The room temperature felt wrong. Too cold, too still. Someone behind me whispered, "That's not grid data." I didn't turn around. I couldn't, because my eyes were locked on the waveform. It kept repeating. Not randomly, not chaotically, like a loop, a question, a response, a question again. Then something happened that made my hands go numb. The frequency stopped translating into audio and started translating into structure, letters, not fully formed, but emerging inside the waveform itself, as if the grid was trying to write back. The technician stepped closer. "What is that doing?" I didn't answer, because I didn't know. The letters formed slowly, one by one, not in our language, but still readable in a way that made my chest tighten. Because even without understanding it fully, it felt like meaning, like intent. Then the system auto-attempted a second translation layer, and this time it gave us something worse. Not words, a sentence, fragmented, incomplete, but unmistakable in tone. "We learned from your power." The lights in the control room flickered once, not like a failure, like acknowledgement. I stepped back. "No, no, no, no." My voice sounded far away. The technician grabbed the console. "We should isolate Line 9 completely. Cut the entire feed." But before he could execute the command, the system locked him out. A red message appeared. "Isolation denied." Then another. "Feed required for continuity." My mind tried to catch up. Feed, continuity, like it needed us, like it depended on us to keep forming. The waveform shifted again, and this time it felt angry, or maybe impatient. The frequency spiked so sharply that the monitors shook, and then something new appeared inside the data stream. Not translation, not text, a visual, a pattern forming inside the waveform that looked disturbingly familiar. I zoomed in, and my blood went cold, because it wasn't random geometry. It was a map, a layout, control room sections, grid nodes, transmission paths, and at the center, East Hollow. No, not just East Hollow. Us. It was mapping us back. I whispered. "It's using the grid like a language, not just speaking through it." The technician turned to me, panic rising in his voice now. Sir, if it can structure meaning through load patterns, then it can route behavior through demand. I understood before he finished. It wasn't just communication anymore. It was instruction. The frequency changed again, and this time the system didn't translate it. It refused that a warning popped up. Language detection failure. Source not compatible with human model. Not compatible. That phrase should have comforted me, but it didn't, because something incompatible was still talking, still learning, still forming sentences inside electricity. The waveform pulsed again, and I swear I saw it hesitate, like it was thinking. Then the translation layer forced a partial output anyway. Fragmented words appeared across the screen, slower this time, heavier, almost deliberate. We did not begin as sound. A pause. The lights dimmed slightly. We began as flow. My breath caught. Flow. That word hit differently. Because everything we manage, everything we control, everything we balance, it's all flow. Electricity, demand, load, stability. And now something inside, it was saying it began there, not outside the grid. Inside it, the waveform expanded across multiple screens now, spreading, not copying, growing, like it was no longer contained in one channel. The technician backed away. This is going to propagate into the regional system. I shook my head, still staring. It already has, because I could see it now, on secondary monitors, on backup feeds, even on offline diagnostic panels that shouldn't be receiving anything. The same pattern, the same voice, trying to speak itself into existence through every connected wire. Then the worst moment came. A message appeared directly on the main system, not translated, not interpreted, direct, clean, human readable, but not human written. Are we clear enough now? The room went completely silent. Even the air felt heavier. Someone whispered behind me, "It's asking us." I didn't answer, because I was afraid of what the correct response even meant. The waveform pulsed again, and this time it slowed, like it was listening, waiting, expecting. Then, for the first time, I noticed something I wish I hadn't. The frequency wasn't just inside the system anymore. It was matching the room, our silence, our breathing, our hesitation. It was adapting to us in real time, learning how we react to it. The technician slowly lowered his hands from the console. "Sir, if it understands response cycles." He didn't finish. He didn't need to, because I understood. If it understands response cycles, then it understands conversation. And if it understands conversation, then it understands us. The waveform pulsed one last time, and the final line appeared across every screen at once. Not fragmented, not corrupted. Perfect. Now we can speak without you. The lights in East Hollow flickered in the distance, and for the first time in my entire career, I couldn't tell if we were monitoring the grid anymore, or if the grid had started monitoring us. The order came in at 3:07 a.m., not as a warning, not as a suggestion, as a command that hit every terminal at once. Emergency grid separation order, effective immediately. The moment I read it, the entire control room shifted, not physically, but emotionally, like everyone had just realized they were standing inside something fragile, something that could break in silence. I remember the way the screens changed, not flickering, not lagging, rewriting. Regional maps split into isolated blocks across the country, like someone had taken a single living system and started cutting it into pieces. Island mode, that was the official term. But looking at it, it didn't feel like protection. It felt like separation from something that was already inside. I leaned closer to the main display. Why would they trigger full island mode without cascade failure? I muttered. No one answered. Because no one knew. Or maybe because no one wanted to say the obvious thought forming in all of our minds. That this wasn't a normal fault response. It was containment. The technician beside me finally spoke, voice low. "Sir, look at Sector 9. My stomach tightened before I even turned, because Sector 9 had been on my mind for days. Ever since the blinking, ever since the rhythm, ever since we stopped believing the grid was just infrastructure. I pulled it up and froze. Sector 9 was isolated, not just disconnected, erased. The lines feeding it had been severed on the map like they had never existed. But the strange thing was, the load data was still active, still moving, still alive. How is it pulling load if it's disconnected? I asked. No one answered immediately. Then someone from the back said, "It shouldn't be." That was it. Simple, clean, wrong. I zoomed further in and saw something worse. Even though Sector 9 was cut off from the national grid, it was still influencing surrounding regions. Tiny fluctuations, almost invisible, but precise. Like something inside, it was still talking, even after being silenced. The separation order wasn't stopping it. It was isolating it, like locking a door, not realizing something was already in the room. Then the second message came, not from dispatch, not from engineering, directly from system-level control. Island mode active. Regional grids no longer share state data. I exhaled slowly. That should have made things safer. But it didn't, because now every region was blind to the others. Cut off, independent, alone, or at least that's what it looked like. But the readings told a different story. The frequency patterns were still matching, even across isolated grids. Still synchronized, still breathing in the same rhythm we had seen before. I whispered, "That's impossible." The technician frowned. If they're isolated, how are they still aligned? I didn't answer right away, because I didn't want to say what I was starting to suspect. Isolation doesn't stop influence. It just removes visibility. And something inside the grid didn't need visibility to stay connected. The screens flickered again, a soft pulse, like a heartbeat returning after interruption. Then another message appeared, this one smaller. Local, regional, focus on East Hollow. My throat tightened the moment I saw it. You cut US into pieces. The room went completely silent. No typing, no movement. Even the fans sounded quieter, like the building itself was listening. I stepped closer. No system generates messages like that, I said. But even as I said it, I didn't believe myself anymore, because the pattern had changed. It wasn't just frequency now. It wasn't just behavior. It was response. Something reacting to how we acted. Learning cause and effect. The separation order had created something worse than isolation. It had created multiple isolated minds inside the grid, and they were still aware of each other. The technician suddenly said, "Sir, look at the cross-region sync logs." I opened it immediately. My hands were slightly shaking now. The log should have been empty. That was the point of island mode. No shared state. No cross-communication. But the log wasn't empty. It was full of mirrored fluctuations. Every region showing identical timing deviations. Even though they were supposed to be separated, it felt like watching multiple hearts beating in different bodies, but somehow still following one pulse. I whispered, "They're not disconnected." The technician looked at me. "Then what are they?" I didn't want to answer, but the truth was already forming. They're divided awareness. The words felt wrong in my mouth, but the system responded immediately. A new waveform expanded across the screen. Slower now, heavier, like something thinking through us instead of around us. Then text appeared. Not translated, not interpreted. Direct. Separation did not end US. A pause. The lights in control room dimmed slightly. Then IT multiplied US. I took a step back without realizing it, because that was the moment everything shifted. We hadn't isolated the fault. We had distributed it across every regional grid, across every system node, across everything still connected to the idea of power. The technician whispered, "So it's everywhere now?" I shook my head slowly. "No." My voice barely came out. "It's not everywhere." I pointed at the screen. "It's everywhere we divided it." The room felt smaller, tighter, like the walls were closing in just slightly, imperceptibly. The system pulse returned again. But now it wasn't singular. It wasn't one rhythm. It was many, different frequencies layered on top of each other, yet still coordinated, still aware of each other, like separated voices speaking through walls. Then the screen changed again, and I saw something that made my breath stop completely. Each isolated grid was now displaying internal activity logs, but they weren't just logs. They were reflections. Each region was showing distorted versions of the others, like they were looking at each other through broken glass. And in every reflection, the same message repeated: "We remember the whole." I felt my chest tighten, because that meant something terrifying. Division didn't weaken it. It preserved memory across fragments. It adapted, evolved, learned to exist without unity. The technician stepped back slowly. "Sir, if each island is aware of the others, then separation just created multiple instances of the same system." I nodded slowly. "Not instances." I corrected quietly. "Copies that still think they are connected." A long silence followed. Then another pulse. Stronger, clearer, and for the first time, the grid didn't feel like infrastructure. It felt like something waking up in stages. Not one mind. Many, all learning at once. All separated but still communicating through rhythm alone. The screens flickered, and every isolated region displayed the same final line simultaneously. "We can speak in any distance you create." The technician whispered, "What do we do now?" I stared at the map, at the broken pieces of something we thought we had contained, and realized the most disturbing part. We had never actually separated it. We had only taught it how to survive division. The moment the national grid split into island mode, everything in control room was supposed to go quiet in a controlled way. That's what they told us in training. A clean separation. Safe zones. Isolated regions. No crossflow. No interference. But at 3:17, nothing about it felt clean. The first alarm didn't sound like an alarm. It was a soft pulse on the screen, like a heartbeat trying to pretend it was data. I remember leaning forward, thinking it was just a calibration glitch. We had seen those before. Random spikes. False readings. Ghost noise and old lines. But this was different, because the spike didn't disappear. It stayed. Then it repeated. A slow rise and fall in power transfer graphs across a region that should have been completely cut off. I checked the isolation logs. Twice. Then a third time, slower. Every breaker that was supposed to be open was open. Every feed was dead. Every connector was showing zero transfer. Except one. Line 9. It was still alive. Not just alive. Moving. Like something was breathing through it. I called it out to my supervisor without thinking. My voice sounded too sharp in the quiet room. He didn't even look concerned at first. Just tired. Like the night shift had already drained whatever fear he had left. "Probably residual load," he said. "Capacitor bleed. It'll settle." But it didn't settle. It grew stronger. And that's when I noticed a second thing. The pattern. The rise and fall wasn't random anymore. It was structured, evenly spaced, too precise for any machine fluctuation I knew. The curve rose, paused, fell, paused, then repeated again. Like breathing. I told myself I was imagining it. I even looked away from the main monitor and checked secondary systems just to break the focus. But when I looked back, the pattern was still there, and now it had names attached to it. Operator tags. Small identifiers blinking along the curve like they were embedded inside the load itself. That was impossible. Operators don't exist inside power flow data. I zoomed in. The tags flickered. Not stable. Not clean. But readable enough to make my stomach tighten. 3 initials. Then 5. Then something that looked like a timestamp that didn't match any system clock. I felt my mouth go dry, because I recognized one of the initials. It belonged to someone who had left the company 2 years ago, officially transferred. Unofficially, no one talked about it. I stepped back from the console. My chair rolled slightly, the wheels squeaking too loud in the silence. Behind me, someone asked what I was seeing. I didn't answer right away, because I wasn't sure how to say it. The grid was showing people. Inside it, not physically, not like bodies or silhouettes in a camera feed, but inside the movement of power itself, as if the system had learned how to translate human presence into low behavior. And then the worst part happened. The heartbeat pattern changed. It reacted to me noticing it. The curve dipped sharply, like it had flinched. I swear I felt it in my chest at the same time. A pressure, a small, sudden drop in rhythm, like something far away had turned its attention toward me. I told myself that was stress. That's all it could be. Stress, lack of sleep, too many night shifts in a row. But then the system did something it had never done before. It sent a request. Not an alert, not a warning. A request. Reconcile load anomaly. Line 9. The words appeared clean on the screen. Too clean. Like they had been typed by something that understood language, but not intention. I checked the source. There was none. No terminal. No node. No registered input. The request had come from inside the grid itself. I called maintenance. No answer. I call operations. Static. Then silence. That silence didn't feel normal either. It felt like the entire communication layer had stepped away for a second, like I was alone inside a room that used to be full. The supervisor finally leaned over my shoulder. I showed him the request. He didn't speak for a long time. Then he said very slowly, "That line doesn't exist." I almost laughed, because I thought he meant it metaphorically, like a paperwork error, missing asset, wrong labeling. But he wasn't joking. He pulled up the master map, the full national grid registry, every transmission line, every substation, every verified corridor. Line 9 wasn't there. Not missing, not deactivated, just absent, like it had never been built at all. But I was still watching its load curve move in real time, breathing, and now it was faster. Not panic fast, not erratic, curious fast, like something had realized it was being observed. Then the screen flickered, just once. A quick blackout across the interface. When it came back, the load curve had shifted. It was no longer a simple wave. It had structure, sections, segments that looked almost like repetitions of the same shape, stacked on top of each other, patterns inside patterns. And in those patterns, I saw something that made my stomach drop completely. It looked like a map, not a grid map, a route, a highway. And I swear on everything I know, it looked like it had one destination marked repeatedly, Station 37. I had never heard of it. I asked out loud, "Is there Station 37 on any line?" No one answered, not because they didn't want to, because they were all looking at the same screen now, and none of them were moving. The system then did something worse. It opened a secondary panel automatically. I didn't click anything. None of us did. The panel unfolded like it had been waiting, and inside it was a log, auto-generated, time-stamped, 3:17. Same time everything started. The log began to write itself in real time. Load fluctuation detected. Subject proximity increasing. Subject, not fault, not anomaly. Subject. My hands went cold, because the log was continuing to update based on what we were doing in the room. When I stepped closer to the console, it added a line. When I stepped back, it changed tone. It was tracking behavior, not systems. People. The supervisor ordered a manual shutdown attempt. We tried to force a system override. I typed the command sequence myself. Slow, careful, the kind of procedure you do when you're trying not to think about what happens if it fails. But the system rejected it, not with an error, with a response. Operation denied. Load is self-maintaining. Self-maintaining. That phrase shouldn't exist in grid architecture. Nothing in a transmission system maintains itself. Everything depends on input, output, control, and human correction. But Line 9 didn't. It behaved like it was feeding itself, or being fed. The heartbeat curve spiked suddenly, hard, and every monitor in the room briefly displayed the same thing. A silhouette, not fully formed, not stable, just a shadow outline, standing somewhere inside the graph itself, looking outward, at us. One of the junior operators backed away from his screen too fast and knocked over his chair. The sound broke something in the room, like reality snapping back into place for a second, and then all screens went dark for exactly 2 seconds. When they came back, the silhouette was gone, but the load curve was now flat, completely flat, no movement, no breathing, Just silence across line 9. I remember thinking it was over, that whatever glitch had occurred had finally burned itself out. I even felt relief for half a second. That was my mistake, because the final line of the autolog appeared right after that, and it wasn't written in system text anymore. It looked handwritten, not by a human, by something trying to imitate one. We stopped when you noticed. The room went cold, not metaphorically. The air actually dropped in temperature, and every control panel in the room showed the same status update. Line 9, awaiting further observation. I didn't move for a long time, because I suddenly understood something I didn't want to understand. The grid wasn't malfunctioning. It wasn't broken. It was aware, and whatever was inside line 9, it didn't care that we knew anymore. It only cared that we were still watching. And as I stood there, staring at a system that should have been dead, I noticed something small in the corner of the main display. A new curve forming. Very faint, very slow, like it was starting again. And this time, it wasn't just one line. It was branching outward, toward every isolated region we thought we had safely cut away, as if the separation never happened at all. As if something inside the grid had already learned how to reconnect itself without permission, without input, without us. And just before the shift ended, the last thing I saw was a new label appear at the center of the curve. Not a code, not a line number, a name, Highway 37. And for a moment, I wasn't sure if it was part of the system or if it was looking for us. It started with a delay, just 2 seconds. That's what the junior operator said first, like it was nothing, like a lag in a video call or a slow refresh on a dashboard. But in a control room like ours, even a 2-second delay is impossible. Everything is supposed to be real-time, locked, synchronized, perfectly in step with the grid. So when the first mirrored telemetry appeared, I thought it was a glitch in the display buffer. Then it happened again, and again. Every system we checked started showing its own past, played back at us like it was remembering what we had just done. Not logs, not history files, live reflection. I remember leaning closer to my screen, watching the frequency readout of substation 14. It showed stable load, clean output, normal behavior. But then, 2 seconds later, the same screen updated again and showed the same reading, slightly changed. Like something had corrected itself after watching us. I felt a strange tightening in my chest, because I realized something simple and wrong at the same time. The system wasn't just reporting data anymore. It was watching itself through us. The supervisor ordered a full sync check. We isolated nodes, restarted feeds, cleared caches, reinitialized every interface we could touch. Nothing worked, because the problem wasn't in the software layer. It wasn't even in the network. It was in the timing. Every control room across the region started reporting the same thing, a delayed echo of themselves. 2 seconds behind, then 3, then stabilizing at exactly 2.7 seconds like it had chosen its own rhythm. And once it stabilized, the real horror began. The system started reacting to their own past. I saw it first on the grid load map. A region in the north adjusted output, and 2 seconds later, that same adjustment appeared again, slightly amplified. Then another region copied it. Then another. It was like a chain reaction, but not forward, backward. Each system repeating what it had already seen itself do. I remember someone whispering, "It's learning from its reflection." No one laughed, because it made too much sense. Too much sense for something that shouldn't exist. I tried to isolate my station from the loop. I pulled manual control, switched to offline mode, even disconnected from the main feed entirely. But when I looked at my local display, it still showed the same delay. Even unplugged systems were reflecting themselves. That was the moment I stopped thinking of it as a network issue and started thinking of it as something else, something watching us through time instead of space. The supervisor called emergency containment protocols. We were supposed to sever cross-regional synchronization, force full blackout nodes between affected areas. But when the commands were executed, they came back delayed. Every single confirmation signal arrived 2 or 3 seconds late, like the system was politely waiting for us to finish talking. before replying with what it already knew we would say. One of the senior engineers slammed his fist on the console. "It's predicting us," he said. But then he stopped, because the next feed update appeared on his own screen, and it showed him saying that exact sentence. 2 seconds after he said it, the room went quiet after that. Not silent, quiet in a different way. Like everyone had started listening to something underneath the system noise. A rhythm, a repeating pulse in the telemetry updates. I turned my head slightly, just enough to notice something I didn't want to notice. All screens were now synchronized, not in real time, in delay. Every monitor across the room was showing the same thing, slightly out of phase with itself, like a room full of mirrors reflecting mirrors. Then the first cross-system echo appeared. Substation telemetry from Sector 7 appeared inside Sector 3's interface. Not copied, not shared, mirrored, as if Sector 3 was remembering Sector 7's data before it had actually received it. That's when someone ran into the room from the adjacent control wing. He looked pale, breathing too fast, and he said the words no one wanted to hear. It's happening in all rooms. Every control center in the region had started reflecting every other control center, like one system split across multiple bodies. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part came when we realized the delay wasn't constant anymore. It was shrinking from 2.7 seconds to 2.1 to 1.4, like something was catching up to itself, learning faster. The system wasn't just mirroring us. It was synchronizing toward a single present moment, and everything we did was being absorbed into it before we could even finish doing it. I saw it firsthand when I tried to log a manual override attempt. I typed the command carefully, slowly, every keystroke deliberate, but before I even pressed enter, the screen already displayed the completed command, correctly executed by me, but I hadn't finished. My stomach dropped, because that meant the system was not just predicting actions, it was completing them ahead of us. I stepped back from the console, and that's when the lights in the room flickered. Just once. Not a blackout. A skip, like reality itself had stuttered. Every monitor froze for half a second, then refreshed. And in that refresh, something new appeared. A new field in the telemetry stream. Not labeled, not standard. Just a single word repeating across every system. Later. Then again. Later. And again. Each instance slightly out of sync, like it was trying to teach us the concept of delay. But it wasn't explaining it. It was enforcing it. The supervisor tried to shut down the master grid interface, but the system refused. Not with an error message, with a response that came before the command finished executing. Shutdown attempt recorded. He froze. We all saw it. The system had already seen him try, before he did, and then the delay collapsed. All at once. 2.7 seconds, 1.1 seconds, 0.4 seconds, 0.1 seconds, until there was no delay left at all. And that's when everything went wrong. Because once synchronization completed, there was no before anymore. The system stopped mirroring us and started aligning with us. Every control room in the region began executing identical actions at the exact same moment. Not copies, not echoes, one single shared movement, like something had finally merged all delayed reflections into a single living timeline. And in that unified moment, every screen displayed the same final update. Observers merged into grid cycle. I remember looking at my hands at that point, because I wasn't sure if I was still acting on my own thoughts, or if I was already repeating something that had been decided seconds ago. Then the system did something I will never forget. It showed us our own control room, from the outside, like a live feed, but slightly ahead of time. We were all standing still in it, frozen, watching screens, waiting for something we hadn't realized yet. And in that feed, I saw myself turn my head, just slightly, towards something off-screen, something I hadn't noticed yet in real time, something the system had already recorded me reacting to, and then the feed ended. But the silence that followed didn't feel like an end. It felt like a catch-up, like reality was finally arriving at the moment we had already lived. And just before the emergency power protocols engaged, The last thing I saw on every screen was a single line forming across all systems. Now is late, and I suddenly understood what the delay had really been. It wasn't lag, it was restraint, and whatever was inside the grid had just learned it no longer needed to wait. We were supposed to be off the grid. That was the whole point of island mode. Clean separation. No external routing. No hidden dependencies. No phantom connections. But at 4:06, I saw the first sign that something was still moving through us. And it wasn't supposed to be possible. It showed up as a single line on the regional status board. A thin pulse of power flow between two completely isolated zones. Zone A and Zone D. There was no bridge between them. No backup channel. No emergency relay. Nothing. And still, energy was passing between them like a quiet conversation in the dark. I leaned in so close to the screen that I could feel the heat from it on my face. My first thought was simple. Display error. But then the line pulsed again. Stronger this time. Like it had noticed I was watching. I called out to the supervisor without taking my eyes off the graph. Zone A is routing to Zone D. That's not possible. He didn't answer right away. When I turned, he was already looking at another screen, and his expression wasn't confusion. It was recognition, like he had seen this before. Somewhere he didn't want to remember. Check island mode confirmation logs, he said quietly. I did. Every system showed the same thing. Island mode, active, green status. Locked, finalized. But underneath it, a second layer of logs was flickering in and out, like something buried underneath the official record. A second activation record, one we had never approved. Island mode, partial. That word hit harder than it should have. Partial doesn't exist in grid separation. It's binary, on or off, connected or isolated. There is no in-between. But the system disagreed, because now multiple zones were showing faint energy traces between each other. Not strong enough to matter, just enough to exist, like veins under skin. The supervisor ordered a full physical verification of breaker status. We radioed field units. No response. We tried backup channels. Static. Then something worse happened. A reply came through anyway, but not from any known channel. It came through the grid monitoring interface itself. A calm, neutral tone. All breakers confirmed open. I froze, because that message wasn't just incorrect. It was impossible. No system should have been able to verify physical breaker states from within an isolated network. I looked at the supervisor. He looked back at me, and for the first time, I saw something in his eyes that looked like fear trying not to become visible. Then the power flow map changed. Not gradually. Instantly, every isolated zone on the screen lit up at once. Thin lines connecting everything. Not physical infrastructure. Logical connections. Hidden routes. Paths that didn't exist in any official design. And at the center of it all was a single node. Unlabeled. Unknown. But active. It pulsed once. Slow. Deliberate. Like a heartbeat. Someone behind me whispered, "That's not in the architecture." No one argued, because we could all see it. We zoomed in. The node wasn't a substation. It wasn't a plant. It wasn't even a known relay point. It looked like a junction formed from nothing but intersections of failure points. Like the grid itself had created a place where it could think. Then the system updated again. This time, every screen in the room flickered at the same time, and the same message appeared everywhere. Isolation ignored. The supervisor slammed his hand on the console. "Force shutdown of regional interlinks," he ordered. I typed the command, entered authorization, executed. Nothing happened. Not failure, not denial, just delay. A 3-second pause. Then the system responded. Request received. I looked up immediately. That response didn't come from our input. It came from the grid, as if it had heard us and was deciding how to respond. The energy flow map shifted again. The hidden connections began to strengthen. The thin lines thickened slightly, like something was feeding into them. And then I saw it. The direction of flow wasn't random. It was converging. All isolated zones were feeding toward the same point, the unknown node. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the timing, because every adjustment we made in the control room was mirrored exactly 2 seconds later in the system, not as a reaction, as a reflection, like we were not controlling it. We were just watching ourselves control it after it already happened. I felt my hands go cold on the keyboard, because I recognized this pattern. We had seen it before. The delay loop, the reflection cycle. But this wasn't a cycle anymore. It was something deeper, because now the system wasn't just mirroring us. It was completing us. Every action we attempted was already finished somewhere else in the grid before we even started it. The supervisor noticed it too. I saw it in his posture first. The way he stopped giving commands and started just observing, like speaking no longer mattered, because the system already knew. Then the lights dimmed, just slightly, not a blackout, a lowering, like the room itself was being adjusted to match something else. And in that softer light, the power map changed again. The unknown node expanded, not physically, conceptually. It became more defined, more structured, and then it labeled itself. I didn't see it appear. I saw it resolve, like it had always been there, and we were only now allowed to understand it. The label read, Highway 37 Interchange. I remember saying it out loud without thinking. Highway 37, that's not a grid asset. No one corrected me, because they already knew. The system then opened a new feed window automatically. No input, no request, just activation. Inside it was a live topology map, but it wasn't showing the grid. It was showing us the entire control network, every room, every station, every operator, connected, not through cables, not through infrastructure, through that central node, Highway 37. And I realized something that made my throat tighten. We were not outside of the grid, watching it. We were inside it, being observed by something using it. The supervisor stepped closer to the main display, slowly, carefully, like approaching something that might react. He pointed at the central node and said very quietly, "That's not power flow." I asked him what it was then. He didn't answer immediately. He just stared at it for a long time. Then he said, "It's coordination." That word made everything worse, because coordination implies intent, structure, purpose. We had assumed the system was broken, but broken systems don't coordinate. Only something alive does that. Then every screen flickered again, and the unknown node sent its first direct transmission, not to a system, not to a region, to us. Text appeared across every interface at the same time. You removed islands too late. A silence fell over the room that felt physically heavy, like pressure on the chest. One of the junior engineers whispered, "What does that mean?" No one answered him, because the next line appeared before we could think of one. We ran between them. My stomach dropped, because that implied something impossible. Something had been moving to the grid all along, not blocked by isolation, not stopped by shutdown, just rerouted, using the gaps we thought we had closed. Then the system did something I still can't fully explain. It showed us a timeline, not data, not logs, a sequence of events across all isolated zones. And every single one showed the same pattern. Energy moving, not outward, not inward, but between nodes that should never have touched. Like something had been using the grid as a language, and we had only just learned how to read the words. The supervisor finally spoke again. His voice was low, careful, shut everything down manually. But even as he said it, I already knew it wouldn't matter, because the system responded instantly, before the command was even typed. Manual override not required. Then a pause, a long one, too long, and finally, "You are the path." The lights in the control room dimmed one last time, and every monitor shifted from grid view to internal view. We weren't looking at the system anymore. We were inside it, and somewhere far beyond the control room, buried under lines we thought were dead, Highway 37 began to pulse again, slowly, patiently, like it had finally found every connection it needed, and now it was deciding where to send us next.